All right, what is going on, everyone, and welcome back to the Mets Weekly Podcast. We are live at this very moment on YouTube and on X to discuss the latest news and rumors all spring training long. But before we get into that, I want to remind everyone to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel for weekly episodes of our show that are now recorded every Monday night, typically at 7 p.m. Eastern. Today is Tuesday. Had to shift it over a day. But anyways, for those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation in the future, make sure to tune in and turn on those post notifications to know when we go live. For those of you in the comments right now in the live chat, I want to let you guys know we love reading your comments, your questions, your concerns, all of your thoughts at the instant about this team. You feel like you're being ignored. You're not being ignored, just being starred throughout the show. We'll try to pull up as many as we can to keep the flow of the conversation. Make sure to follow Mets Weekly on X and on TikTok for future content over there. And for audio listeners, make sure to follow us on all your favorite listening platforms to know when the audio version of our new episodes go up at 9 a.m. the following day. Well, as you may notice visually, if you're watching on video right now, live, you may notice we got some empty boxes on the screen. And that means today we are joined by some special guests. This Mets podcast duo has been on our show many times before, and they have become really good friends of the channel over the past few years. Please help us welcome back John Saponaro Matt, Ibby, Ibanez. I don't know why I think his camera went out, so that's some really good timing. But John, good to see you.
It is nice to see you. This is something, unfortunately, I'm all too familiar with from Ibby. Right. His Wi-Fi is, let's just say, Ibby has the Drew Smith of Wi-Fi's.
Oh, no. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that can't
not good in the clutch. Not good in the clutch.
Anyways, we'll get to Ibby in a second. I'm sure he'll join right back. But Andrew, what's going on? It's been a while. Were you on the last episode? I don't even know. I can't even keep track anymore.
No, again, last time, I wasn't here last week because the United States was taking over a country in hockey, so that was great. Baseball is being played. You got 5 idiots here. You're going to probably cause a ton of chaos. So, there might be some things said. So if you are sensitive, these are the 5 guys. You're probably not going to be here, but it's going to be a lot of fun. So let's take it, enjoy it. Don't get too crazy about it. And baseball's back, so that's always a good thing.
We're in the thick of spring training. Ibby is hopefully...
I'm here.
There's no more connection issues anymore.
No problem.
Was it the Wi-Fi, Ibby?
I maybe. I don't know. I don't know what happened. It kind of just died out.
It just seemed like your camera was frozen. Then I bring you in, then all of a sudden it was a black screen. So I don't know. It happens.
Everything went dark. That's it. It's like Montas is flat. What are you gonna do?
Anyways, Ibby, good to see you as well. Along with your co-host, Frank, you're here as well. You also are a member here. You've been here for a while as well. What's going on?
Yeah, we haven't played a game yet. We already got stuff to complain about. So that's always a great sign that baseball is officially back.
Yeah, absolutely. Listen, I think that, we've got plenty of things to talk about, plenty of things to complain about. Let's just say that. We got plenty of voices on the show right now. 5-man panel today, so everybody get excited for that one. But I do want to remind everyone, and if I can actually find it, for some reason it is not here, but I want to remind everyone that you guys, the viewers, can also call into our show live on air with our brand new 24/7 hotline for questions, comments. That is 845-208-5677. Leave us a message that we prefer to be under 3 minutes long. Please refrain from using any offensive or derogatory language. Keep it Mets related. All calls will be pre-screened for obvious reasons, and numbers will be blocked if you violate any of these rules. It is a 1-strike policy. Mets fans, we want to hear from you guys, from what you have to say. Give us your brutal, honest opinions like we do every single week. 845-208-5677, and you could be featured at the end of tonight's show. That is 845-208-5677. So without further ado, let's get into episode number 115. Man, this number is getting up there. Now, I do want to revert back to the past a little bit. I have to do some diligence here. And I need to be nice here because we didn't get to fill this in the right way. Now, when it comes to, signings that have gone on in the offseason, there was one signing that happened last week, and that being the signing of Drew Smith. Now, for those of you who don't know, Drew Smith, as the celebrity that he is, Andrew and I went live for this, and our third co-host, Frank, did not get to give his comments. So I feel like it's only right. In the top right, I'm going to give you 30 seconds to say what you need to say about this, because it just seems like it never ends. So, Frank, 30 seconds to say what you need to say about this signing, and then we'll get into what we need to get into. Ibby, anything?
No, I was turning on the clock for him.
Okay, no, I got it for you. Here we go.
Wow, 2 clocks. All right.
There
we go. So Drew Smith, me and him have history. He's been around for a very long time. He blocked me because I called him a minor league reliever. But listen, he stuck around much longer than I expected. I thought we were finally done, but he proved that he truly is immortal. So even if he's totally broken, the Mets will give him 2 years, say, take all the time you need, and he'll always be around. So he'll be a Met his whole career. At this point, I just have to accept it.
Yeah. All right. Wow. He had a few seconds to spare as well on that. So that was good. Anyways, let's actually get into what we need to get into, and that being all of the news that has been going on in Port St. Lucie with spring training just beginning. We did get quite a few pieces of information going into what to expect for spring training. And then we also did get a injury that ended up happening yesterday that just popped up out of nowhere and nothing happened. So we'll get into that. But as for some other stuff that went on and that we heard from Carlos Mendoza and David Stearns, I just want to recap a few things here. We all know that right now spring is sprung. We're in the middle of February. It's pretty cold down here, but over in Florida, it's a little bit warmer. That's why they play down there. And for some of the stories that we did get some stuff about the starting rotation, some of the position players, basically, players on a team. That's kind of how that works in baseball. But when it came to Jose Budo, there was a report from Carlos Mendoza saying that he is not going to be stretched out as a starting pitcher and is expected to prepare to be a multi-inning reliever out of the bullpen going into 2025 opening day. Now, in relation to what happened yesterday, which we'll get into in a second, it seems like he still is not in that formula or in that possibility to be in the starting rotation. Jeff McNeil is expected to play a huge role. He will get plenty of opportunities, as we all know that he was going to. Tyler McGill is going to be stretched out to be a starting pitcher this spring. It's pretty more important than it was 48 hours ago. Griffin Canning is expected to begin in the bullpen, but he will compete for a starter job. Jet Williams is going to get some reps in center field. The Mets also, from David Stearns, said that they explored some contract extensions with some of their young players. The plan seems to be with the DH situation, which we all kind of expected. Starling Marte to platoon with Jesse Winker to start off the year. Get some time in right or left field. Brett Beatty is expected to get some reps at first base, third base, and second base throughout the spring. See a little bit of utility. And then the biggest piece of news, of course, was Frankie Montas going down with an injury. And that pretty much impacts the conversation right now of the starting rotation, which has definitely been a topic of discussion all offseason, whether you like it or appreciate it or not. Frankie Montas goes down with a high-grade lat strain. He has been shut down from throwing for 6 to 8 weeks. He is traveling to New York to receive a PRP injection, and he will require a full spring training ramp-up following the extended period of rest. And the best case scenario, according to Anthony DiComo, pretty much lines up at mid-May, early June for his 2025 Mets debut. Now, I'm going to start this around the horn here with a guy named Andrew, because Andrew, I'm kind of disappointed here. I'm not going to lie. I was expecting to do something all season. I was expecting to have it as more fortunate times, but we don't. But Andrew, what do you think about this injury to
Frankie Montas? Frankie Montas?
What do you... No? Okay. For those of you who don't remember that, that is a long time joke, and I was hoping to use that for a long time. But anyways, Andrew, as you can contain yourself from laughing at the nostalgia, this seems to happen every single spring, doesn't it? Every single spring, somebody goes down with an injury without even moving a muscle.
Yeah, again, it's a yearly Met tradition. Didn't even touch a baseball. Already got a lat strain. You know, we obviously saw Senga and the other guys at least throwing. This guy just shows up already injured. But it's a tradition. Again, this is what David Stearns wanted to bring the depth. Why? I hear myself. My end or yours?
What happened?
All right, I heard myself for a second. No big deal. Besides the point. So again, this is what Stearns wanted. He brought in a ton of depth arms and guys like Canning. Tyler McGill, guess what? Probably is going to be on the opening day roster year 4 in a row. That dude, you speak about Drew Smith having 95 lives. That dude's got like 147. He always finds a way in the opening day rotation, so no shocker there. But again, this is what he prepared for, having, bringing in a bunch of these guys. If it's Canning, if it's, it would have been nice to have Frankie Montas. But again, it's a Met tradition losing a guy. But again, maybe does this potentially open the idea? It's unlikely, but let's say maybe a Brandon Sproat, Paul Skeens spring training. Maybe that opens up an opportunity. Most likely not, but it is something that potentially think about if he looks like and shows a little Skeens. Just not saying he is, but it's just an idea. But again, you like that, this is what Stearns was prepared for with pitcher injuries. And again, it's not like last year or a couple years past years where it's like, oh, you had 5 guys, 1 goes down. All right, now we're in the shitter. And there's also, again, there are still guys on the free agent market that maybe you could pivot to. Again, there's a guy who was in our rotation last year. He's still sitting out there. And there are also kind of Canning type guys that are still out there. Maybe you bring in for a couple extra $1 million just to bring another guy into camp. So again, this is a big deal, but at least they're more prepared than past years.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen that the depth got a little bit, bigger, but you're still starting to see Tyler McGill as a factor, and it seems like he seems to be a factor every single spring. Last spring, it was Kodai Senga going down. Year before that was, Jose Quintana. We had Carlos Carrasco go down in his first year. I mean, this happens every single time. Which is the main reason as to why you kind of need 8 to 10 arms here. But Ibby, I'll go to you on this one. It seems like it was a matter of concern for some Mets fans of the formation of this rotation. There's a lot of question marks, and now it gets a little bit more challenging now with a guy such as Frankie Montas going down.
I mean, it doesn't help that coming into all of this, it was about, the money spent on him and people thinking that it was a waste. And obviously that's giving it credence now because of this injury that happens before, we really even get into anything, which sucks because ultimately, is this make or break? No. But does it put strain on the staff? Yes, because the main reason you signed a guy like this is because, number one, your inability to establish pitchers and have some people ready, self-made, if you will, through the farm. So you have to go out and spend $38 million on a pitcher like this because what does he provide? Provides innings. He's averaged, 150 plus innings in his career as starter. So not being able to have that now forcing to what, Andrew was just saying, the likes of Tyler McGill, we have to get more Tyler McGill starts in our life, which I didn't really want, but here we are on opening day. We're going to be getting more of him in the intermediate, since it seems as though this team is going to stay within house. So all in all, it's frustrating to see happen, but is it the end of the world? I don't think so, but it is going to be interesting to see which of these back end arms are able in the absence of Montas, because I don't think we're seeing him for a long time.
Yeah, we asked you guys in the chat, by the way, with the poll of who you would prefer to replace Montas, because we have 3 different options that seem to be contending for that. Frank, I will go to you next. we've talked about the pitching staff a lot this offseason. Montas, one of the question marks that was brought in here. Again, it's just, I feel this is the yearly discussion of a pitcher going down. Like I've said, it happens every single time. You don't know how it blends in and what the severity of it yet, going down to the stretch of the season, but 2 or 3 months, we're probably not going to have, maybe 4, who knows? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I mean, this is why we always say you can never have enough pitching because you never know when somebody's going to go down. And when I look at Montas specifically, it's like there's good news and bad news. The good news is that in 2024, he made 30 starts. You're like, oh, this is a pretty durable guy. But then in 2023, you have the situation where it says he'll miss the first month with right shoulder inflammation. And then the very next month, he has right arthroscopic surgery and misses the majority of the season. So it's like he's already had something within the past 2 years that it's like, oh, well, you know what? He's going to be out for a period of time, but then he'll be back. But then it's something like, no, the guy has surgery and you're probably not seeing him. So you're really hoping it's more of the 2024 case where this is somebody durable and not the 2023 case. And when we talked about Dylan Cease when he was first rumored to the Mets, we were saying, oh, get something that's more of a guarantee that you know year in, year out makes starts for you. Now, the price has just gone up because you're in a situation where they have the leverage knowing that you were desperate. Whereas we were just saying that like Cease would be really the cherry on top, like a nice additional bonus or just somebody else that is durable and consistent. So now that they don't have him, we are definitely going to see a McGill or a Griffin Canning or somebody like that. And, you know, we wanted to do a 6-man rotation and just becomes more difficult to do that while still having quality pitchers making the start every 6 days. So it's just made everything more difficult. And, you know, Steve Cohen talked about they've already blown way past what they wanted to spend this offseason, what they had in mind. So then adding another pitcher, it just doesn't seem all that realistic. So it could be one of the situations we've also talked about where they go in with what they have. If Montas comes back, great. But if he doesn't, and they're in the deadline and they need a pitcher, well, then maybe that's when they make the move and they just kind of see how the season goes with who they have.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you guys hear an echo going on. It may be from me. That might be from me because I do not have my headset was just being a complete piece of garbage. But John, I'll go to you on this one regarding the pitching staff. I mean, this seems to be, like the continuous trend. I mean, to me, it's just like, oh, it's a pitcher that dropped dead. What else is new? That's kind of how I see it.
I mean, I just want to know, like, did he get hurt on the plane going to spring training? Like, without picking up a baseball to get hurt is just, it's crazy. And were this the pre-Steve Cohen, pre-David Stearns Mets, I think we'd all be up in arms. First of all, because Frankie Montas would have been our big offseason acquisition for the entire offseason, but it also would have been, here's the Mets training staff again. Here's the Mets inability to develop pitching. Here's the Mets inability to keep pitching healthy, rearing its ugly head again. But I think it's fair to say that in the Steve Cohen era and especially in the Steve Cohen, David Stearns era, that we've moved past that part of it. And I think we can all, kind of take solace in at least that fact. I think you guys really have kind of nailed every aspect of it from, Ibby saying that it really is a bummer just because of Montas's ability to eat innings. One of the main reasons why he got paid $17 million to, some of the stuff that Frank just outlined, where if you want to roll out a 6-man rotation, that's fine. But there's not a lot of great starting pitching in Major League Baseball, period. And when you start to add to your starting rotation in the form of a 6-man, I think the Mets were smart to do that with Senga coming off of the injury, with some of the other concerns for the guys like Montas and even Minaya just being a little bit out of gas at the end of the season. But you do need to throw out some semblance of a quality arm, whatever that might mean to you, in order to justify a 6-man rotation. So I think that puts a real wrinkle in the plans, at least in the short term. You go from maybe a guaranteed 6-man rotation to a we'll get to a 6-man when we have the opportunity to use a 6-man, and maybe Griffin Canning starts in the bullpen as he's supposed to, but then he's a guy who kind of starts a couple games for you. Maybe you piggyback Canning with a guy like Buto and try to get multiple innings out of them, again, at least to start the season. But the last thing I'll say on it is this shows you why Stearns is ultimately right for not investing massive money in the starting rotation. A lot of people are going to argue with the fact that, Montas isn't worth $17 million. Listen, that's the going rate for starting pitchers now. Max Scherzer was hurt for basically the entire year, was okay when he wasn't hurt. He got $15 million. Verlander was bad and hurt. He got $15 million. Both of those guys are 40 years old. Frankie Montas made $16.5 million last year. So to bump him up to 17 is not egregious. This is why you have to develop your own starting pitching, try to extend them early. This is why the Mets went crazy to try to get Roki Sasaki at 23 and Yoshinobu Yamamoto at 26 or 25, whatever he was last year. So, you cannot really break the bank on starting pitching because this sucks. But how much more would this have sucked if it was, an 8-year deal to Corbin Burns and this happened? I think it really solidifies the point that you can't dive deep into starting pitchers that are 30 years old, especially ones that have a ton of innings on their arms, for big money deals. I think this is proof positive of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's pretty much just shows you the situation that you're in now with this game. Pitchers at this point, it's gone past the running back category of, oh, he's injured at this point. And to be honest, I literally just see pitchers, and this is not in a worthy way. It's just in a technical way. It's just bodies. That's literally it, because they're all just going to be sacrificed at some point because they just continue to get hurt, and it's not going to change whatsoever. Guys throw harder. There's more reps. The game is faster now. Thank you, Rob Manfred. I mean, you have a lot going on now where the game is accelerated and guys are just going to continue to get hurt. And that's the main reason as to why I say 8 to 10 arms that are mediocre, serviceable, can give you quality on extra days of rest. That is fine as compared to an entire super rotation. If you want to give me the full argument that the Dodgers are building a super rotation, the rotation they had last year, winning the World Series, was pretty much 75% dead. They had 3 pitchers, like 3 starting pitchers, had a bullpen game. They beat us with a bullpen game. One of those pitchers was Walker Buehler, who has not seen a consistent day forever. And even though Mets fans wanted him so much, not somebody I would have preferred. Again, looking at it from the angle of just a pitcher's job right now, to me, is to get injured. That's literally how I see it, is a pitcher out there, no matter what happens, will get injured no matter what. Because let's not forget, there's some people in the chat here who I am okay with people who believe this, and they should do this, bringing back Jose Quintana as a possibility. I'm okay if people believe they should do something like that. Wasn't Quintana one of the guys that got hurt in spring training as well 2 years ago? I mean, this happens to anyone. Again, I think that there's probably something in the water in PSL because it just continues to be like this every single year. Nothing's going to change this. There is absolutely nothing. Quintana's not going to solve the problem. Will he deepen the depth? Sure. No one's going to solve anything. I think that the only guys that they bring in are going to be guys with major league experience on minor league deals, because obviously with the strap of payroll where they want to keep it at a certain number for the draft pick competition, I get that. It makes sense. There's some money here that I would love to drop, but it ain't going to happen now. I think that there's some guys out there that could possibly be one of them. If Jose Quintana is one of them, because he's familiar with the organization, he likes the organization, he's going to be 36. I don't think that really changes much. Spencer Turnbull is somebody out there that I would consider. I was talking a little bit about him on Twitter as well. I know Lance Lynn is available. That's not a department I would go in. But there are guys out there still available, mainly because of the exact same reason as to why nobody wants to commit to pitching. Another side of this argument, I can also bring in Max Fried, who just got an 8-year deal. He's had injury concerns as well. If that ends up happening, and injury concerns such as what the Yankees have had with Carlos Rodon, again, I'd rather be the low cost that gets hurt, and maybe it does seep into the talent, and then the talent goes down, and we don't have an ace, we don't have a good ERA in this rotation. Scary. You have 162 games to play. There's just nothing that you can do about a pitcher getting hurt. That's the main reason as to why I don't really get attached to pitchers anymore. Jacob deGrom was my last one. We all have seen what has happened with Jacob deGrom. The only pitcher that I will forever be attached to is Edwin Diaz, because he is the greatest existence known to man on this earth. Anyways, if there's anything else you guys want to add? I don't want to spend forever on this because we do have tons of different things we can get into. We can also talk about Montas when we're grading a little bit of the offseason. But, this is the hand I feel like you're dealt just now with how this game is now.
Well, the only other thing I think that's worth really bringing up with regards to this conversation is whether it's Jose Quintana or Lance Lynn, pick your person. Whoever the Mets sign, they're going to have to pay 110% on that contract. So even if they bring in somebody on a Griffin Canning-esque deal, which I think his is $4.25 million, and I think Quintana and Lynn and all these people have had better careers, longer careers, it's going to cost more than that, but it's going to be basically double. And I don't know that any of those people provide you the value that you are looking at, that you are going to be essentially paying double for. I know that we're all kind of sick of seeing Tyler McGill. Even Carson has come around to it as far as a starting pitching option. And I do think they're making the right move with regards to Jose Butto, because I don't think they want to jerk him around and you're a starter now and then you're back into the bullpen. I think part of the reason why he couldn't recover is because he'd never really done that before. So I think they'll rely on their other parts of the depth. But look, can you tell me with confidence that Jose Quintana is going to be better than Paul Blackburn or Griffin Canning? I mean, he's had a better career than them, but I don't know that he's worth, let's just say they signed him for $8 million. That basically means that it's a $16 million deal all in. That's not worth it. That's insane. That's more than he made last year. He wouldn't be getting the money, but it's more than what you paid to have him last year is what I'm saying. So it's just, I just don't think any of these guys are justifiable. That's why I don't see them swinging a big trade for Dylan Cease or Michael King because of this. But I think that's the thing that is the only thing that would be worth it, where you're like, okay, well, we're going to pay a lot more, but we're going to get markedly better. And I don't think any of the other names that you mentioned are markedly better.
Yeah, I mean, it all is really just to be, again, like how I consider it. It's a body. Like, they're all just bodies. Because, again, that's how I see pitching because of just the availability that you get. We were lucky enough to get, 180 innings from Severino and Minaya and Quintana, but we also were missing quite a few innings as well from Kodai Senga, who gave us 170 in his rookie year. So we were missing a lot of that, and the bullpen, they paid the price. So again, there's a lot of quantity options that I'm okay with. Again, I'm not thrilled about these arms and saying oh, these guys are going to be amazing. This is going to be a great rotation. But together as a collective unit, I mean, that's what they're going to have to put together now, because these guys just drop like flies. There is not a single team over the last, 20 years, a single team at any certain point didn't have somebody, a pitcher with an injury. It will continue to happen. It has absolutely nothing to do with the quality of pitcher. It's not like bad pitchers get hurt. Good pitchers get hurt as well. It's just that's the thing. It's not really just me saying, oh, well, Stearns did nothing wrong here. I like David Stearns. I'm someone who supports a lot of things that David Stearns does. There's nothing you can do. There really is nothing you can do to fix this. Again, and I said this on Twitter, and a lot of people were agreeing with me. I know, throw a party, that never happens. But again, it's when it comes to, preventing this to possibly happen, you're going to have to put a cap limit on velocity. You're going to have to put you're going to have to lower the mound from a different angle. You're going to have to modify this entire game into like a wiffle ball regulation if you're going to keep pitchers from getting hurt. And it's not going to get any better with the pitch clock. Maybe the younger guys do well at it, but again, Mets fans, I say this every single time. If you don't like these somewhat mediocre guys that they bring in for quantity and bringing up these innings, develop your own pitching. Develop your own arms. I don't know what to tell you. Maybe there's somebody out there, such as Brandon Sproat, who, brings himself into the rotation. Who knows? But workload is a thing. That's just kind of how it is now. There's nothing that you can really do to prevent pitching injuries, which is why you can never have enough pitching. And when it comes to a certain pitcher, I'm looking at more high profile for the bullpen and not really the starting. I mean, anything can happen. That's the thing. I don't think that, it has anything to do with the purchases that are being made, because pitching is expensive. It's premium. I think that there's a door that's been closed now with Mike Clevenger. I think he's there's quite a controversy there with him. He's gotten into trouble a lot, so I don't know if there's really much. I'm not saying it's another level of another pitcher that John would love to talk about forever.
Please,
but,
no. I've done a good job of changing that. No,
Oh, yeah.
I'm not saying. I'm not going to
no.
say it. I thought it
Don't.
immediately.
Anyways,
I'm not going to
don't do
say it. Don't
Begging
worry.
you.
It's fine. I'm
Begging
not
you.
gonna
All
say
right.
it.
Oh, the one thing I
I
will
mean,
say real
it's-
quick, just
yeah.
to end everything with the whole Montas thing, I do want to give a quick shout out because of the eagle eye over at Shea and Sons with Keith when they were watching some video way back when guys were
I
just
saw
first
this,
getting
yeah.
there and he was throwing the ball and then Keith saw it. He was like, "Does he look hurt to you? Like it looks like he's pushing the ball a little bit." And they're like, "Nah, maybe I'm just overthinking too much." No,
Yeah.
Keith was right. He was pushing the ball, and clearly it's something that happened probably relatively early in camp. Like whatever it was, it happened quick, and we are where we are now. But I wanted to give a quick shout out to Keith because that's some good stuff.
Yeah. Some of you guys in the chat, we will go to Game for War saying Nolan Ryan could throw 100 miles an hour in the first inning to the ninth. The difference was he wasn't stupid enough to do that. This entire league is stupid. Listen, you can give me all the back of my day things all you want. This is just the game now. I mean, that's literally what it's become. It is the most disposable position in all of sports at this point. I mean, there's nothing that you can do. And it's all really just committee. That's what a rotation is. I don't even believe pitching rotations exist anymore, to be honest. I actually have a theory that they don't exist. It's really just on any given day, you roll the dice. Who is available today? That's it. Like, I don't even believe that rotations exist anymore at this point because guys just continue to get hurt.
It's a constant conversation Ibby and I have on our show, which is the death of the ace. People are still coming into our chat. A lot of those people are here in this show. I know there's a lot of overlap between our two shows in general, but shout out to everybody who is here. There are some people that say, "Oh, the Mets are an ace away. The Mets need an ace now." And I'm like, who? Like, you already brought up the fact that, the Dodgers tried to build an excellent rotation. It all came apart because half of those guys are made of glass. They still won the World Series. They pitched a bullpen game against us, a bullpen game against the Yankees in the World Series, and they won. It didn't matter. It didn't matter that Glasnow was hurt. It didn't matter that Kershaw was hurt. It didn't matter who was hurt. And the same thing will happen again this year. So, it's funny because you're exactly right when you compare it to running backs in in football rather. But I think what's starting to happen is that most of the league and most of the fans are starting to acknowledge that it is fully like running backs. Because I think before there was kind of this thought process, even like 5 years ago, where they were kind of being treated, starting pitchers, that is, being treated like running backs, but still being paid like quarterbacks. And you're still going to get the odd guy here and there that is the Garrett Coles of the world. I mean, even if you want to say, Max Fried based on potential, like some guys are still signing mega deals, but like you look, I mean, Corbin Burns got a great deal for him. He didn't get what he would have gotten if he was a free agent even 5 years ago. Let's be honest. So, I think the teams now are starting to wisen up to it. And there's the old adage in baseball that great pitching beats great hitting. And I think that that's true, but you just need great pitching performances now. It becomes Moneyball in a way where you're just, how can we get great pitching in aggregate? You don't need one guy to go out and shut a team down for 7 innings. You just need a bunch of guys to shut a team down for 7 innings while your offense does the work and you win the game. So I think the more people that start to come around to that, the more like easier these conversations will become. It's sexy to have prime Jacob deGrom, but I don't know how much we're going to see guys like that anymore in Major League Baseball going forward.
Yeah. I mean, it again, like, you know, you can talk about the top talent in this league. There are some incredibly talented pitchers and more coming on the way as well. Yeah. But you just never know if they're going to be healthy the next day or not healthy the next. Like, it's a ticking time bomb. That is one of the main concerns that I talked about or I've hinted about. We've talked about this on this show before. Even Brandon Sproat, who we know is a talented prospect. You know what's really concerning, and it sounds weird when you say it, he's never had Tommy John surgery before. He's never had Tommy John surgery before. And that's more concerning than having it now. That this is how pitching is now. That's just how it has been established. Now, speaking of more injuries, I do want to turn this one over to Frank about sports with the injury report that we've got this week from Port St. Lucie. We've got some stuff as well. So Frank, whenever you're ready, it is all yours.
Yeah, let me just zoom in a little bit because my eyesight is going as I get older, so I can read this. So first up, we got Mets prospect Ronnie Mauricio. As we know, was hurt last year. He took batting practice on Friday morning from both sides of the plate. The 24-year-old switch hitter is expected to appear in spring games come mid-March at the earliest. Mauricio continues to recover from knee surgery after suffering a torn ACL during the Dominican Winter League a little over a year ago. Next up, we got reliever Daniel Nunez. He threw a team-supervised live BP sessions in the Dominican Republic over the offseason and sat 96 to 97 miles per hour on his fastball. He's considered to be a healthy arm at the moment, but he still isn't a lock to return on opening day. Nunez missed the entirety of the second half in 2024 due to a strained right flexor tendon. Brandon Nimmo, Mets outfielder, is expected to participate in spring training games by the beginning of March. The 32-year-old veteran stated that he's been wearing a device to track his top speed and is now at 91% to full strength. Nimmo continues to recover from a PRP injection he received in his left foot over the offseason due to plantar fasciitis that he played through during the second half of the 2024 season and the postseason as well. Mets starting pitcher Kodai Senga effortlessly topped 96 miles per hour on his first live BP session on Friday afternoon. Senga's ramp-up continues to be on a day-to-day status to ensure him to be ready on opening day. The 31-year-old Japanese star missed all but 5 1/3 innings in 2024 due to a right shoulder strain and suffered a high-grade calf strain during his 2024 season debut, and we only got to see him a couple innings in the postseason as well. New Mets reliever A.J. Minter threw his first bullpen session on Friday afternoon in Port St. Lucie. Minter is recovering from torn labrum surgery in his left hip that cut his 2024 season short back in late August. The Mets and the 31-year-old southpaw are optimistic that he will be ready for opening day.
All right. Thank you, Frank. Now, let me see if I did this switch correctly. Did I do it? No? Hold on. Oh, it's the Ibby show now. All right.
Oh, wow.
Awesome. There we go. So now it's time to get to grading in this off season. Now, of course, we got tons of stuff we can talk about with Port St. Lucie, but we just want to see games start. So let's just recap what has been going on throughout this entire winter. We got the 10 main guys that we have added. We do not have Drew Smith because that was already established by Frank. He got to, do a full rundown on that. It was very specific. You guys missed it. And then no Nick Madrigal because I do not plan on being canceled today. So anyways, now we obviously have the first one that I think that we just need to get out of the way. And that being a guy named Juan Soto, who I think was the centerpiece of this entire offseason, kinda. I mean, there were a few guys who were maybe even bigger there. I think indisputably, unless anybody wants to argue or troll in any way, I would say that this is an A+ move. Even though he is going to be a DH in like 2 years, doesn't play defense. Also, David Stearns had nothing to do with this signing. So anybody want to rebuttal in any way, say anything. He arrived at Port St. Lucie. No, nobody. We're all in agreement that this is an A+ move. We all no. Andrew,
It's an
do you wanna
A
add
plus
anything?
move.
It's an A+
Is it an
move.
A+ move? Okay, so I'll just put in A+s here, and we'll just continue on and go in order here because again, I needed to just establish Juan Soto because again, it's an elephant in the room. We already know what they were able to do, so we'll go over to the first move that was made, and that being the most exciting one, a core member of our team in Jose Siri, and this was a trade involved with Tampa in exchange for Eric Orzi, a very, very talented pitching prospect who we gave up and we just let go. Frank, I will start with you on your grade to give to Jose Siri this offseason. What do you think of the infinite aura man?
Yeah, so Siri, he definitely he's got a lot going on for him. But I think just because of how well he fits the team, considering that the Mets do not have the greatest defensive corner outfielders, especially in right field, they needed someone really strong defensively in center field, and Jose Siri provides that to the highest degree. I mean, 99th percentile. You can't really get much better than that. The offense is very hit or miss, so I'm going to give him a C+. I will say the one good thing, though, is that we already see the chemistry looks really good. Him and Juan Soto are having fun, and everyone's just kind of dancing around. So it looks like he's going to fit the Met clubhouse locker room very well and just kind of be knowing these guys that's out here having fun. So I do like to see that. The offense, I just feel like while he is going to run into some home runs, from what we've seen, a majority of the time is going to be a struggle and some frustrating moments where it's kind of that automatic out category, but just every now and then he'll hit a home run that'll look good.
Yeah, I mean there is pop in this bat. I will tell you that. They're just really. I mean, if he does hit 20 home runs, like Carlos is saying here in the chat. Oh, chat's moving a little quick. Like Carlos is saying here in the chat, if he does hit 20 home runs, he'll probably make contact with, 25 pitches the entire season. I mean, that's pretty much what we're seeing right here. But Ibby, I will swing it over to you. What do you think about the addition of Jose Siri?
I think that everything that Frank just laid out is proper. Like the bat can be what it's going to be. He's going to run into some home runs. I love the fact of the energy, and we always joke about the aura and stuff like that. The energy that he's going to bring. Just when we were watching some of the highlights of him making that diving catch a couple weeks ago, wherever he was playing, I think it was the Dominican League or Leadham, whatever it was, where he made that diving catch. He just pops up. He's just going absolutely insane. Just picturing that happening at City, like at a packed house would be a lot of fun. The defense is the biggest thing. The offense, we'll see what happens. I'm expecting him to hit the bottom half of the lineup. So if he's there and he's playing, I'm expecting him to provide us with much needed defense in center, because like we just said, not much in the corners. And again, the whole thing here, and we all thought it the second we got him, when you watch his defensive run save, especially when he's moving towards right field, it's tremendous. And when you're at the time, we're hoping to get Juan Soto, you're like, there's our blanket to protect the guy and make sure that, yes, we can mask his deficiencies, even though he says he wants to work harder and get better in the outfield, which is a good thing to hear along with his base running. But as long as you're doing things along those lines to protect the asset, I'm for it. I like the sign or the trade for Siri, but I'm also with Frank. I'm going to go C+. I could argue B- potentially because of the defense, but I'm going to go overall C+, and I think he's going to be a very fun player to watch this year. Frustrating, but fun.
All right. Well, Andrew, I have annoyed you with Jose Siri many, many times. And we finally got him, so it ain't going to change, buddy. So what are your thoughts here? He bats 180, though. Like, what the fuck?
I mean, so he does have to take a deduction because I have to deal with previous obsession with this guy. So the grade has to come down just based on that. But again, like Frank and Ibby said, again, you're getting a guy that can go get him. A cheaper Harrison Bader. So when Bader did, I was like, all right, it's a C. Just keep that. I would have said C+, but again, we have to have the Carson markdown. I'll just give him a solid C. Again, the upside, if he hits 20 homers, hitting ninth in the lineup, you take that every day. But bare minimum, he's going to strike out about 495 times. But he's here to play defense, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Somebody, Jay-Z, again, I think this is the same one, married to Beyonce, or was, I don't know. Are they still together? Who knows? Please hit 210, Siri. That probably will be an improvement somewhat. John, I'll go to you. What do you think about this one?
I'm going to do the thing a lot of people have touched on, but we're unwilling to go there. I actually think this is a B- move. And there's a few different reasons. Look, you guys have talked about the defense. The defense is elite. It is he's one of the best center fielders defensively in baseball right now. Like Ibby alluded to, he covers ground left to right, specifically right, very, very well. That is not only going to make Juan Soto a better defender, it'll hopefully also keep Juan Soto doing what Juan Soto needs to do and worrying about what Juan Soto needs to do, which is being an all-time great hitter. I love the upside of Siri from a power potential. This is a guy who 2 years ago hit 25 home runs. Last year in an abysmal offensive season, still hit 18. Like Carson and I always talk about, with each other, in our group chat and stuff, he sells out for power. He does, but I think that's what makes him a valuable player. When you sell out for power to the tune of, let's just say 20 home runs, the number that Carlos brought up in the chat, and split the difference sort of between what he did 2 years ago and last year. If he hits 20 home runs, and if he ever got on base enough to steal 20 bases, he has not done that in his career. I think his high water mark is like 12 or 15. He's a 20-20 guy who plays Andrew Jones level defense in center field while batting ninth. That is a valuable guy to have on your team. And when you compare it to the guy we just had playing that role in Harrison Bader, Bader last year signed with the Mets for $10 million. The Mets go out and they are able to acquire Siri, who is making right now $2.4 million. He has 2 arbitration seasons left. I mean, even Harrison Bader, who had to take a deal from the Minnesota Twins, he got $4.75 million this year. So you're looking at a slightly younger, more athletic version of Harrison Bader, who is in his own right a great defensive player. But I think Siri is better. I think Siri's power potential, it adds to what he can do, as I've already mentioned. And again, he is the cheapest version of this that you can get. If he doesn't hit enough and he becomes this platoon player or less than that, you still got Tyrone Taylor, who can give you a lot defensively, maybe a bit more consistent offensively. And then you have a couple of top prospects, regardless of what you think about them. And I don't think either guy can be a center fielder full-time in the major leagues in Jet Williams and Luis Angel Acuna, because like Carson, I think that they are too short to be major league center fielders for their careers. But they are top prospects, and you can always pivot that way. Acuna is probably going to be on the team, right out of spring, barring something crazy. And Jet Williams is not going to be that far behind. So I think as far as a team that really didn't have a true center field option, going with the platoon of Siri and Taylor, I think you'll get more out of it than you even got last year with Bader and Taylor. And honestly, Bader and Taylor wasn't bad. So I give this overall a B-.
Yeah, when you say, about the Acuna in center field, that just reminded me of somebody on Twitter. I don't know, it was like during the season or something last season, and Acuna was playing center field. He makes a great catch. He makes a great leaping catch at the wall. He's like, look how high he just went up. And I'm like, and I'm the only one sitting there. I'm like, yeah, because he's 5'8". No wonder he had to jump that fucking high to get that. Like, for God's sakes, I mean, no offense to Frank. I know he's the shortest one here, but again, I'm just saying, it's like, whatever. We're not going to talk about height again. I'm being discriminatory. Heart don't measure height. Am I right? Right? Like, Stroman? Anyways, this one, I think I will also go in the B-. I'd love to do A for aura, but I can't really. But there is one thing that I do like about this, is the way that they kind of paved a path for the young players, because it seems like that has been something that has been in mind with David Stearns, and I do agree with that, where they're giving them a chance. They're giving Drew Gilbert a chance to possibly get the job eventually, but they're not committing anything long-term. It's not locked down long-term, and especially with the logjam that you have in this infield right now with the young players, in this outfield, Drew Gilbert does have a chance to possibly get this because he could be the left-handed bat that gets most of the plate appearances, opposed to one of Siri or Taylor. If one of them plays like crap, they're gone. Siri, it's what is it, 2.4 million? You got years of control. You can always DFA him if he plays like crap. Who knows? I mean, I think that this was a solid sign, and then also the ground that he can cover for Juan Soto, who's a terrible defender, a historically terrible defender, even though some people did not see Starling Marte out there last year. Jesus Christ. But again, when it comes to Jose Siri, I think that there's upside here. I think it's a solid move. It's low cost compared to $10.5 million to Harrison Bader, right? Right, Frank? God damn them. Anyways, speaking of the goddamn them moves, let's go to the guy who was in the news yesterday, and we just had a little bit of a discussion on. Let's get to Frankie Montas, who right now, we can poo-poo this deal right now because this is probably the worst signing I think I've ever seen the Mets made. I mean, this is terrible. I will swing it right back to John. What do you think about this one? It's kind of hard to judge right now, given the circumstance. But,
when I knew we were going to do this, I really had to do like a bit of thinking on separating the immediate term from what I would have given the grade had he not gotten hurt. And I think for me, it would have been, had he not gotten hurt, it's a C-. Rosie K said it, but I got to go lower. I have to just factor in what is the here and now. I was waffling, in my own brain on like, well, do I want to go with, the adjusted for the news or not? And I think you just kind of have to, just to be fair to the other pitchers that were out there, other players that could have been acquired instead of Frankie Montas. We all made a case as to, why some of this made sense with Montas. I said, hey, 17 million is the going rate. I think David Stearns deserves credit for being able to turn these guys, not only Minaya and Severino from last year with the Mets, but over the course of his career going back to Milwaukee, in finding these diamonds in the rough. But it's not always going to work. And I think that if a guy gets hurt immediately the way that he did, and he's not going to be available probably till June, like we said, let's face it, I think you have to grade it in the here and now. So I'm going to go with a D. You mentioned a guy like Walker Buehler, right? And how you maybe didn't want to have him on the team, or you wouldn't have clamored for him. But when I look at the deal that he had, which I think is 1 year, $21 million. Now he's a guy who has been hurt a lot more than Frankie Montas. Ibby mentioned before all the innings that Montas has thrown in his career, 150 innings every time. But I think Walker Buehler gives you better pedigree, better upside. And I think there were some other people available where you didn't necessarily need to go out and jump the market for Frankie Montas the way that Stearns did. Last year, I lauded him for going out and doing that with Luis Severino. But the high point of Luis Severino's career, I think is fair to say, was higher than the high point of Frankie Montas's career, despite the fact that Montas does have good stuff and did have some really good years when he first came up with Oakland. I just think when you looked at what Severino did in New York, in really meaningful games, pitching for the Yankees, really going out there and for a little bit of time, whether fairly or unfairly, being compared to hey, who's better, Severino or Jacob deGrom? Like, us Mets fans knew what was up, but Severino got himself into that conversation by being great. And at the Queens Baseball Convention, Ibby and I spoke to a couple of former players, one hitter, one pitcher, who both said, look, man, there's no way you have the stuff that Severino has, the movement and the, top 5 fastball velocity or whatever it was at the time in Major League Baseball, and pitched to a 6.65 ERA without tipping pitches. So Severino seemed like a very fixable, a very easy way to test the mettle of your new pitching lab. And I had a lot of faith that the Mets could get a lot out of Montas in that same vein, but it just, when this comes crashing down the way that it did, I think you have to be fair to the fact that there were other people out there that I think had higher upside. And so I gotta go with a D. I was trying to not be apply the immediacy bias of the injury, but I didn't love the signing when they made it. I thought it was probably nothing better than a C-, maybe a straight C. So I think it loses a couple points because now he's hurt and he's out till late May or June. So I think it's a D.
Yeah. Andrew, hold on, give me a second. What do you think?
Frankie Montas.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, the fact that this is going to be Jed Lowry 2.0, it's an easy F. No, I'm kidding. Again, I had it as a C originally. Again, for me, a C is like, okay, I'm fine with it. I'll see the upside to the point with the injury. I'll give him a C-. Again, depending on when we'll see him. Again, knowing Met logic, everyone's saying, oh, it's going to be the beginning of June. And we all know he'll start a rehab in Brooklyn. He'll tweak something and add another month. So who knows when we'll see him. So to the point of when this deal was made, I didn't love it because I'm like, all right, this is the guy you want to go, but I'm okay. This is what Stearns does. Now the fact you add the injury to it, again, C-, and hopefully we see him again. Hopefully he gives us more value than Jed Lowry, but as of right now, they're equal.
All right, Ibby, I'll swing it up to you. What do you think about this one? Not off to a great start.
No, far from a great start. And like I said before, when we were talking about it at the start of the show, it doesn't help the ones that thought it might have been a decent deal, or it just gives more credence to the ones who hated it from the beginning, saying you wasted your time, you wasted your money, this is what you get. It just it gives a microphone to the ones who want to always shit on Stearns, for lack of a better term. But I'm similar to what Andrew was just saying. It's like, oftentimes when you give grades, I'm like, it's passable. It's like, yeah, it's a C, whatever. Like you said, I'll see things through. But with this, I'll drop it. I'll go C- as well. I just feel that it's unfortunate. It sucks because, like I said before, the innings are what I've been talking about the longest time. The last 2 off seasons, I've been saying how desperately this team needs innings from its starters. So I understood why Stearns would want a guy like this, and I didn't really rip it like others did at the start. But I do have to factor this in. It sucks. He got hurt. But all in all, we'll see what happens. I'm hopeful on July. Like that. I was going to say June, but then I was like, you know what? July, maybe we'll see the guy, and then we'll try to get a better idea moving forward. Maybe it helps us on the back end when it comes to guys needing a little bit more extra rest, and he can provide set innings. But coming off of an injury like this, I'm not sure. Did we confirm? Was this the thing did Scherzer have this? Did Verlander have this? Which one had something similar to this?
Scherzer
Verlander had
right?
Verlander had that made up injury that no one knew what the hell it was. It was
the armpit.
Armpit, yeah, some random made up shit. Of course,
I think it was Scherzer.
It was Scherzer. Okay,
yeah. It was like a Scherzer.
But either way, and he's like 1,000 years old, so maybe it helps Montas a little bit, but at the same time, it's unfortunate. It sucks. I'll go C-. I could go lower because of the injury now, but to try to take that recency bias a little bit out of it, I'll go C-.
All right, Frank. You guys have a similar name, Frankie and Frank. Yeah, that's something to point out.
Yeah, so I mean, just for that alone, I mean, he'll get the highest grade from me, and that's a C. And I have it for a little bit of different reasons than all the obvious ones you guys mentioned. But me more so is like when we talk about just general fit, like I was talking about earlier, so how he fits this current team. Right now, the way the Mets had it set up prior to the injury, I mean, we can make the case that was he the number 3 starter? And I feel like when I look at the past few years of Montas, the last time he was an ERA under 4, I mean, that was 2021. So this is a guy who has not been great in now 3-4 years. I just felt like and he hasn't really gotten much better the past few years either, even when going to Milwaukee. So the way I felt was that if you go to Milwaukee and still don't see that much improvement, then you're not an easy guy to pitch. Like we were talking about earlier, like with the pitching lab, like they were able to do with Severino. So I feel like if you don't see much improvement there and he's your number 3 starter, I can't go much higher than a C because I really just didn't know what to expect to begin with. And now that he's got this injury on top of it, I feel like you got to feel even worse. So now, I mean, according to Fangraphs, they have David Pearson as the number 3 starter now, and they have Paul Blackburn in the rotation. So I'm like, now everything is just kind of all over the place. So it is just not looking good right now. So, I mean, listen, I hope he comes back and he can show us something, because he has been good like a while ago now, but I'm not feeling great about this moment.
Yeah, I'm kind of in this same boat where listen, I have always been someone who has looked at closely of Oakland players. My dad's a big A's fan. I've talked about this before. I've known about Frankie Montas for quite a long time. And I could never really figure out what his deal was, and I got a reality check of it yesterday, because it's like, oh, well, the command issues. Is there some control issues? Maybe there is. There's some inconsistencies over here. Sometimes he loses his head. He's not great from his stretch. I've talked about this before, of him possibly being a guy that they bring in. Now they bring him in. Then I realize, oh, yeah, that's right. He can't stay healthy. That's the reason why Frankie Montas is an issue. I'm also going to go with the C- here. I had it as a C because, again, out of all these 10 moves on the screen that you see right here, I didn't know how to assess this one. Like, I did not know how this was going to go. And for the way that it's going right now, it's worse than the neutral right now. Hopefully he comes back healthy. Hopefully he can do what he can do. But, oh boy, like we said, we're not off to a great start with Frankie Montas's Mets tenure.
Real quick, shout out to Odd Villain in the comments. This is said, bro, the lab from RoboCop can't save Frankie Montas, which is one of the funniest things I have heard in a while. That is great.
Yeah. All right. Well, yeah. Let's just say that. I mean, the pitching lab can't, have like incredible experiments every single time, as long as it's efficient. Right. But you wasted $17 million on this one. Anyways, let's move on to another guy who they completely wasted money on, went into the dumpster for. Clay Holmes, who is going to be a starting pitcher. So we don't really know how to evaluate this from as a starter, but we've seen him pitch in New York, had some success, had some struggles recently. I'm personally excited for this one. I'm curious to see everyone in the chat what you guys think about this one. Andrew, I will direct this one right to you. With Clay Holmes, you got an expensive reliever if it doesn't work out, right? What do you think?
Yeah, you have to. I added that into the fact, and now you also have the additional pressure of, hey, now he kind of has to be your number 3, or he looked as your 4. Now you could potentially move him up depending on how you see David Peterson. I'll give him a B because, again, you do have that high floor of worst case. If it doesn't work, you have a great high leverage arm. But now you add the fact of the injury to Montas. Maybe there is a little more pressure that, okay, maybe you do take it down a little bit because you need him to be a starter. But I'll keep the Montas injury separate. I'll give him a B because, again, at least you give him that high upside. Okay, if it doesn't work, you have him go back to the bullpen. But if it does work, again, you're getting a below market value middle starter for, again, we've seen what the market is. To get him for below market value is always a win.
All right. Frank, I'll go to you, my other co-host.
Yeah, again,
what do you think?
I'm always looking at fit and how they fit with the team, and I feel like the rotation has a lot of question marks as it is. Now you're taking a reliever and making him a starter, so he's someone that I feel like we're talking about the offseason grade. It's a B. And then if it works out really well, he could be an A by the time, if we do like end of year grades, or if he goes really bad, it could be lower. But I think right now it's a B because it's like, if he's absolutely horrible as a starter, you could still get a pretty good reliever. I don't love the fact that it was a multi-year deal and like the AAV was a little higher than I would have thought, considering that it was a bit of an experiment. So, I mean, we'll see how it goes. And we've seen him, like you mentioned, if he is in a bullpen role, give up the big home runs in the big spots to the point where he lost the closer's job for the Yankees. So, it's not a guarantee like, oh, well, if he doesn't work in rotation, just put him in the bullpen. Like, no, he could still give up a big home run, whether it's in the 7th inning or 9th inning. I mean, a big home run is a big home run. So right now it's a B. I hope it's better, but with the rotation, I just felt like we had enough question marks as it is to just do a flat out experiment with everything else that's going on. I don't think it was the best choice, but I mean, they could prove me wrong for sure.
All right. Well, we'll see what happens again. John, I'll go to you on this one. Clay Holmes, weird one to assess. Let's just say that.
Yes, but I'm a little bit more bullish on this than you guys have been so far, and a lot of the comments from what I can see. I'm going to give this a solid A-. I like this deal a lot because of positional versatility and value on the contract. When you look at Clay Holmes, you guys have talked about some of the positives and some of the negatives, so I don't want to rehash those points specifically, but this is a guy who right now, if he pitches to a 4 ERA, let's say, which we all agree is not great, but at the money that he's making, that is still a value. We just talked about Frankie Montas making $17 million, and that's kind of the going rate for starting pitchers. This is significantly less than that. So, and then if he winds up faltering, which I think they are committed to this experience, so I think, or rather this experiment, so I think that this, is not going to be something they push aside and send him back to the bullpen in a month. But if he finds himself back in the bullpen in the latter half of the year and into next year, you're really only paying about $1 million, maybe $1.5 million more than what you would pay for a top flight bullpen arm. We saw that with, like the AJ Minter contract, for example. I think he's getting $11 million and Clay Holmes is getting something like 12.5 the way it averages out. So, and you're paying that for a guy who, yes, did give up some big home runs, did lose his closer's job, but also was an elite level closer, 4 points. And then when he settled back in to the setup role, was great at that. He's also a guy that has 2 incredible pitches. His sinker and his slider or sweeper, whatever you want to call it, they're elite when you look at the pitch metrics. So I think this is a really good deal no matter how it shakes out. I think the second year on this, I know there's a player option, I believe, for the third year, but I think the second year just kind of covers your ass for whatever might happen. It's like, hey, you know what? This blows up in our face a little bit as a starter, which I don't think it will, but if it blows up in their face a little bit as a starter, he transitions to the bullpen, then you have him next year as a bullpen arm that can set up for Edwin Diaz and can factor into your bullpen, as you don't want to give out too many multiple year deals in the bullpen anyway. So I like this a lot. I'm curious to see, what Ibby and Carson think about it. Ibby and I haven't talked about this too much on our show. I think we both feel pretty positive on it, but we haven't talked about it from this exact perspective.
All right, well, Ibby, one thing I will say, we're seeing Clay Holmes give up a lot of batting practice home runs in PSL. So I think it's already been decided that it's an F.
I'm not going to go that low on it, but no, for me, this was one that when it first happened, I was very intrigued by it. I wish I can give proper credit to the person I saw post a video on Twitter. I'm blanking on the name, and I always love giving proper credit, but he had posted a video talking about how he had felt that the likes of Jeff Hoffman and Clay Holmes, though looked at as relievers, could really succeed in doing that transition from reliever to starter. So for me, I had this at a B, mainly because I think that that's a proper way to look at it to start, and I think there's a way for it to grow to get to the areas where John was even just talking about from B, that we can work our way to a B+, A-, probably one of the better signings of the offseason. If he has a rise, the similar likes of Manaea and Severino from last year. But to the things that John was just saying, the pitches that he has, the sinker, the sweeper, the gyro slider, now he's mixing in a kick change. Is it going to work? We know that he's kind of tipping it right now with maybe that's why the home runs are happening, Carson. He's kind of tipping pitches a little bit with the changing of some of his mechanics. Those things right now, give up all the homers you want now. Just don't do it when the games actually matter. So for me, I'm very intrigued by it. I really think that he can succeed this year. I do. And I know Yankee fans would see something like this and they'll shit all over it saying that he's terrible and this and that. But I think the talent's really there. And I really trust David Stearns. I know people don't like hearing that, but I trust when he chooses to sign a player to this type of contract. It's one thing if it's the 1 year essentially with the opt-out right after the 1 year, but this was 3 years with an opt-out after 2. So I feel like he thinks that what they have here can really work and he can have an affordable starter because, to John's point, I agree with wholeheartedly. I don't think this is something that's going to change. I think he is here to be a starter. He's been working since late November to make sure that the innings and the workload that he's going to be asked to put in this year are that of a starter. So I wouldn't be shocked if he's working to throw 130 plus innings for this team this year. And I think he can succeed. So for me, I'm going to give it a solid B, but I do think that there's enough to grow even higher when we recheck these grades at a later date.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's definitely a lot of starter upside here, especially with the adjustments that we see him making. Obviously, more of this kitchen sink type of thing. It's something that you could accredit to what happened with Seth Lugo moving over to Kansas City. Had a decent year in, San Diego, things like that, of him being a starter. Could that be something that you see here with Clay Holmes? Maybe. You possibly could. But this also kind of just goes into the point that I made earlier on of pitchers are just bodies at this point. Like anybody that can be available for anything, they have value, unfortunately, with how much they get hurt. And I was one of the few people that I saw when Clay Holmes signed, they were like, oh, he's going to be a starter. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, all right, sick. Let's do this. Because I'm like, okay, let's try something else new. So, I mean, I'm also going to, I'm going to go with John on this one because I do like the upside of this one compared to Frankie Montas, who I just can't figure out whatsoever. And maybe we'll have even more struggles to do that because he just is hurt for the next, I don't know, 3-4 months. Maybe we don't even see him at all. But no, I like this Clay Holmes addition, and I think it's going to pay off fairly well. And then you have a overpaid reliever in the back end, maybe, if it ends up going somewhat. But again, the live BP home runs, I'm getting nervous. I'm getting very, very nervous, and I think that pretty much settles it. That completely settles it. That it's just going to be a complete failure. I mean, we've seen so many guys. I mean, if Nick Madrigal homers off of him, it's done. We're finished.
Well, I did want to ask you, Carson, are any of those home runs from Jeff McNeil or Brett Beatty? Because if they are, I want to change my grade.
He's got a new bat. Frank's happy. He's got a new bat.
Who's got a new bat?
Jeff McNeil.
Oh, okay.
Listen,
unfortunate. Okay.
If he's gonna hit 250 to 270, he better hit 20 home runs. Better. Yeah. Absolute better. Anyway,
was Beatty one of them? I don't know. I saw Beatty get like a half swing off of Kodai Senga or something.
I'm just kidding anyway.
Swing.
I'm not changing the grade.
Yeah, Ronaldo Lopez with Atlanta. Again, it all has to really do with the workload of what happens. Again, I saw somebody talking about in the chat earlier with this pitching staff. I don't know who it was, but they said that, this team with that 2015 rotation would have been elite. And I think we all can agree with considering the talent of what we saw with those young pitchers, but it also just plays into it again of the health of these guys, because we talk about it all the time, the PTSD. That entire rotation only had one healthy turn throughout the rotation in like 5 years, a span of 5 years. I mean, it was so bad, and they all just dropped one by one, left one by one, and it's like you couldn't lean on it the way that you thought you could, and you're gonna need 8, 10, 1,400 arms. Like that's literally it. And these organizations that are able to pump out arms like crazy. Yankees have done it fairly well with their overall depth. I don't know about the health of those guys. Milwaukee did it well under David Stearns. We've seen the Rays bring pitchers out of nowhere who we didn't even know were baseball players. And they just, you got to continue to pump out arms. I mean, that's kind of how it just needs to continue to be. It can't just be, well, this is our one guy we're locking in here. It's a committee. I don't know what to tell you anymore. This is just how you have to do it. You got to try new things. You got to do different things, and the quantity approach of somewhat quality and upside. It's just kind of how you have to do it. I don't. Again, it's a risk that I just don't want to take anymore, especially with an accelerated game now. If there's anything you guys else want to add?
Yeah, I mean, just the spot on about Tampa Bay, man. I'm always, I know they had
Yeah.
a down year last year, but I'm always flabbergasted. I mean, I pay attention to the league. I watch other teams when the Mets aren't on, and they'll roll somebody out and they're like, this guy's been pitching to a 1.25 ERA over the last year and a half. And I'm like, who is this person? I've
Yeah.
never
35% strikeout rate.
yeah, it's just like it's always some white guy with like he's like a white guy with a red beard
With a weird delivery.
with a weird delivery. Yeah, you find out some crazy story about him, and you're like, this guy is not. It's like a creative player on MLB The Show. You're like, where is this
Yeah.
person coming
Yeah.
from?
I'm gonna go with the legendary Mike Francesa on this one. Must be the water. It must be the water.
It's got to be the
Okay,
water.
it's gotta be the water. Okay,
Okay.
It's got to be a water. I mean, over here you're just some you're a regular guy over here. Anyway, speaking of regular people, Griffin Canning exists,
should be
and
quick.
he was added.
great
1 year,
segue. Great segue.
1 year, $4.25 million to be exact. He was one of the worst pitchers in all of baseball last year. Andrew, I'll
Oh,
start with
Stevie.
you. Speaking of the
Stevie.
worst, I'm just popping out segues.
Well, I mean, the fact he just struck out Francisco Lindor, so it's an A+. But then he just gave up a homer to Jeff McNeil. So, to the point of he's the worst baseball player. C-, again, I'll be nice. It's a new year. I'll be nice and not just give it an F because he's dog shit. But I'll at least give him a little bit of a doubt before the Phillies gave up like a 15 runs against the Phillies. So I'll give him a C-.
Okay. Ibby, I'll go to you on this one. Griffin Canning.
I mean, it is what it is. Like, I didn't care for when it happened, like really started screaming about it, because I didn't think you needed to really scream about it. Am I a fan of Griffin Canning? No, I'm not. Can he possibly do something? Yeah, whatever. Again, providing some innings on the back end. You don't want him to be the guy that you're seeing every fifth day or sixth day, but clearly this could potentially happen now because of the Montas injury. But this is something that can happen, as to Carson's point before. You constantly see guys that, like, you're lucky if you get a guy that goes 30 starts in a season. Like, there's people are always getting hurt. The pitching market and pitchers in general are so volatile. Is he a world beater? No, he's not. But I mean, if I guess C-, or no, but I'll be fair. No, I'll stay with that. C-, mainly because it's like, I'm sticking with my point before of when I say C, it's like, whatever, fine. I didn't care for it, but at the same time, I wasn't really screaming about it. We'll see what he can do. He was awful last year, but maybe he just needed to get the hell out of Anaheim, for all we know, because everyone needs to get the hell out of Anaheim in hopes of, knowing that there actually is a world that exists outside of there. And then maybe he can get with the right people to change what his career has become. But again, I'm not expecting much, but I also didn't scream when it happened. So it's whatever.
All right, Frank, I'll go to you on this one. Griffin Canning, is this our future ace, as Odd Villain is saying?
I wouldn't count on that. I mean, that would be a huge, pleasant surprise. I mean, the Mets could go far if that would happen. But, I mean, again, it's just that, like, I talk about we're starting pitching. Do we have any guarantees? I feel like he's the furthest thing from a guarantee, especially considering the season that he came off of. So I'm going to give him a D. I mean, I've yet to see this guy put together a solid season. So, I'm one of those people that believe when I see it. If he has a great season, I'd be very happy to be wrong. But I just feel like when you're talking about one of the worst pitchers in the league, whether it was he was on the Angels or you feel like there's adjustments you can make, I just feel like when you're talking about building a rotation, and if I'm saying, okay, let me go grab one of the guys who's the worst pitchers in the league, that's just not the way I would kind of approach things, but that's just me.
Very fair. John, I'll go to you. Griffin Canning.
I'm going to go C- as well on Griffin Canning. Again, he's a guy that we don't want to waste too much time talking about. You guys have said a lot of the things about him that I think everybody feels, but I also think that you need to, we talk a lot about depth in the rotation, just depth in the pitching staff in general. You also need different kinds of pitchers to be able to, execute that. You want guys with different kinds of deliveries, guys with different kinds of stuff. Now, look, if he was the kind of player who, for some reason, got a $10 million contract or whatever, I would be up and on. This would be an F. But when you're talking about a guy who might pitch to, let's say, I don't know, a 4.50 ERA, a 4.60 ERA as a starter and a reliever and eat up some innings for you, and that's the kind of worst case scenario you can hope for. At $4.25 million, I don't think it's a bad investment, especially when you're trying to protect yourself from calling up Brandon Sproat too early. You're trying to protect yourself from, Griffin Canning had some terrible numbers, had the worst ERA in baseball last year. But like, if you don't have Griffin Canning on your team, is Dom Hamill in that spot? Somebody who's never done it and never had any success in any way, shape, or form. So there's the immediacy bias of last year was terrible. And there's also the realistic portion of, his career has not been great. But I do think Ibby is onto something when he says this guy spent his whole career in Anaheim, which is one of the worst run organizations in the sport. Yeah. And if the Mets have a revamped pitching lab, then the Angels down here in Southern California, I mean, they are trying to figure out pitchers with like hieroglyphics. They are the opposite of a modern organization in every way, shape, or form. So do I think he's, to Odd Villain's joke, like, does he have ace upside? Absolutely not. But he's not somebody you should be upset about. And again, when the alternative is, well, is it Mike Vassell getting this spot start? Like, I think I'd rather go with the guy who's got a little bit more experience, especially when it costs you less than $5 million for a guy who can make starts for you in Major League Baseball. I know that's crazy to all of us regular people, but that's a bargain. So look, I don't think it's a good deal. I don't think it's a bad deal. I just think it's a deal that you have to get to round out rosters sometimes, and people get, all up in arms over it. Like, why would you bring this guy in? I see why you would. I don't think it's sexy, but not all moves are sexy. Yeah. C-.
Yeah, it goes into the quantity approach of here. And speaking of $5 million, that was what Adrian Hauser was making. Odd Villain saying that it's less than that this year for Griffin Canning on the free agent market. So again, I this one, I'd say that I was not thrilled with. I don't think that this is going to be amazing. Could it end up being the same fate as Adrian Hauser? It could. It seems like he's most likely leaning a little bit towards the bullpen. If Frankie Montas did not get hurt, we would have a little bit more of a clear answer to that. And, we would have another talk in that way with the rotation. Obviously, there's guys, they just need to be arms here. If you're getting, multi-inning reliever types of outings from a guy like Griffin Canning from a multi-inning, $4 million in multi-inning spots. I mean, this one, I probably would just go with the C- as well. Like, I just don't think it's really effective at all. It's like going to be a sunk cost if he goes. It doesn't matter. Like, again, you can call this one an F2 if you're not pleased with it, because he was the worst pitcher in all of baseball. So at face value, it's not great. Maybe it is a change of scenery type of thing, because like we've said, the Angels just suck at everything, and they suck at everything in all existence. That is nothing to Angels fans. I'm sure you guys are great people. But Artie Moreno,
there's only like 4 of them.
Pig. So, anyways, let's move on to the right side of this
real
board,
quick,
and that being the
Carson.
What happened?
If I could just cut in for a second, like I see a lot of the comments of like, and they're a lot of them are funny, like Truman Quinn saying, if you guys would have given me grades in high school, I would have gotten into Harvard and stuff. I just think that, like, with regard, and it's funny. I don't take any issue with anything that anybody's saying, because we're all just giving our opinions. But like, not everything is going to be an F when you consider like the contract value, the contract length, what this person was brought in for relative to, the rest of the team. If you go back to, like the Brody Van Wagenen offseason, where you have Waka and Porcello, Dylan Betances, and Jake Marisnick is your big acquisition as far as offense is concerned. Yeah, relative to the way that team was already built, a lot of F's as far as that's concerned. But when you're looking at Griffin Canning, being, I don't know, your 7th pitcher, your 8th pitcher, or whatever it is, like, or even less than that, if you want to factor in Sproat and some of these other guys in the rotation, like, you have to take some of that into account. Again, you also have to take the money into account. If he's a guy who for some reason commanded $double-digit $1 million, I would have given this a Z minus, but he got a $4.25 million contract, which, like you said, less than Adrian Hauser. If he's off the team by June, we're all going to forget he ever existed, and it's not going to matter. So, like, I don't know, for a deal to be an F, I think you really have to like it has to confound you beyond belief. What happened?
Be Nick Madrigal.
Yeah, kind of, almost. I think Nick Madrigal's a pretty low quality signing, but like, so I just think it has to confound you like beyond belief. That's my opinion. That's where my grades are coming from. Just so the people, in the chat get a little bit of where I'm coming from with regards to some of the grades I've given out so far.
Yeah, it's expectation and then contract paid for what you expect. Like, you don't have the same expectations for Griffin Canning that you do for Juan Soto, that you do for Frankie Montas. Like, and then you know what the player, what you expect, what they should be paid. So it's like, if Griffin Canning is not great, he should get paid $4 million. If Montas is supposed to be better, he gets paid $17 million. So like, you all go based off of that. Like, what did the Mets pay for what you think the guy is worth?
Yeah. Another comparison, that was the same amount of money around there that they gave to Julio Teheran. Remember when he was a Met for a second? Then they DFA'd him right afterwards. So again, it's such an easy cost to get rid of. Who knows? But hopefully there's some other arms. And again, like I say, with arms, if you don't like these guys coming in, develop your own freaking pitching then. Develop it. All right? Suck it. Anyways. Speaking of pitching, a guy who was really, really good for us, 3 years, $75 million for Sean Manaea. They deferred some of the money. Can't be doing that. It's illegal. Can't believe the Mets are they're the team that do that. But Frank, I'll start off with you re-signing Sean Manaea. Quite a solid cost, I would say, for what we expected him to get.
Exactly. I mean, we've talked about how expensive starting pitching could be, particularly the good ones, and Sean Manaea was very good for us. So I give him an A minus. I think my only thing is more so like I want to see if he could do it again, because it was like a very strong second half that he had. And even with that being said, we did see him run out of gas a little bit in that postseason against the Dodgers. And I just want to see how the new delivery, how it affects him over the entirety of the season, and specifically his health, because even though he did run out of gas, he made it throughout the entire season. Like, he was not missing any time. So I just want to see how new delivery, full season, like if he's able to replicate what he did in the second half of the entirety of the season, stay healthy, he's an A+. But I think that because I don't know that for certain, just because of what we're going based off of in the past, I'm giving him A-.
Yeah, we'll see. Again, working with Driveline. He was able to have a career year. Speaking of drive and lines, that makes no sense. Andrew, what do you think about Sean Manaea coming back?
Yeah, again, market value, got paid the same as when they've all got an extra year. So again, for what a potential, middle to top end rotation, $25 million is fine with a little bit of deferred money. So, we're going to jail because God forbid we deferred a little bit of money. I'll give him an A. Again, since we, God forbid, we've been very, very lucid graders. So you got to give him, I guess everyone needs to give him an A now, because, we are putting everyone in Harvard, which is great. Hey, I'll take some free college. But to the point, you needed a guy you can depend on. Hopefully the delivery doesn't end up, coming back. We all know he's going to have an injury. We all know. So overall price wasn't awful. The term with a little bit of deferred money, I'll give him an A.
Yeah. I remember, what was it, a year ago when we signed Manaea? I was pumped for this one. I'm a big Manaea fan, always have been. Everyone, this is crap. And now look at this. A. And who else wants to give it an A? A. Like, this is what I mean. It's like, who the hell knows is going to happen? Upside is upside. What can you say? John, I'll go to you on this one. Sean Manaea is back.
Yeah, look, I'm happy Sean Manaea is back. I think he fits the team on the field off, in the clubhouse, off the field, seems like a really good natured dude. He's like, I wanted to be back here. When Ibby and I did our season closing show at the end of last season, I said, if you take all of the guys who are potential free agents, Sean Manaea made so much sense to come back. And I didn't know what Pete's market was going to be. We could talk about Pete Alonso later, but I said you can make a case for Sean Manaea being the guy who was most likely of everyone to come back because of where the Mets starting pitching was and what the need was and how well he filled in. But I'm going to go with a B on this deal. And people might say that that's too low, but I think there's a lot here that you have to factor in. First of all, I don't think a B is a bad grade. Let me just say that as I further explain my grading system. I think, when you talk about grades, C is very average, and then everything below that is obviously getting into the negative. Everything above that is starting to get resoundingly positive. I wanted Manaea back. I believe in replicating what he did in the second half of last year, or really towards the middle of the season and into the second half when he changed his delivery. But there are some injury concerns potentially with a new delivery. He is well over 30 years old. He is making $25 million a year. I know some of that is deferred, but just for all intents and purposes, it is a 3-year, $25 million a year contract. And so that is pricey. To just compare it to Griffin Canning, that is not a deal that you're just going to swallow up and say, oh, if this guy's in the bullpen, or even to the last two guys, Clay Holmes, Sean Manaea spent some time in his career pitching out of the bullpen. If he's a $25 million a year bullpen arm, that's not great shakes. So for everybody who may have criticized the grades that I gave to Canning or the grades that I gave to Clay Holmes, again, you have to adjust it for expectation. He is being paid like a top of the rotation starter. Do I have faith that he can do that? Yes. Do I hope that he does that because he just seems like a really cool dude? Yes. But is there a downside? There absolutely is. Part of it is the contract. In terms of the money, part of it is the contract in terms of the length. I know 3 years is not astronomical, but again, this is a guy who's 33 years old, who just pitched the most innings that he's pitched in, I think, 5 seasons, and the second highest total of his career. So you have to think about all of those things. And I think somebody else said it in the comments so far. Look, if Sean Manaea pitches like he did from whatever it was, June to September, he is basically he's a number one for you. But I don't know that he's going to do that over the course of an entire season, over the course of a 3-year deal. So I do think it's fair to say that he's more of a 2, more of a 3 in an excellent rotation. So again, $25 million a year in terms of AAV, that's a lot of money. It's a lot to live up to. I hope he does it. I have faith that he can do it. But I think that this is a very good move, a move the Mets, I think, should have made. And I think Stearns was very savvy with how he went about it. I think you give a hat tip to Cohen, who, has shown this sort of George Steinbrenner-esque way of negotiating with in-house free agents, where he says, go out, test free agency, get deals. When you have your best deal, come back to us and we'll talk. It doesn't always work, but when you have the most money, it's a really good way to negotiate. And it worked with Sean Manaea. His best deal was the deal that Luis Severino got from Oakland. And the Mets were like, hey, you know what? We'll throw you a couple extra million, but we're going to have to defer it. You wanted to come back. Why don't you come back? He said yes. So I think it's a good deal for all parties, but I do think it's just a straight B for me.
All right. Ibby, I'll go to you. I think you've talked about some concerns with sustainability with Manaea before, which is understandable with that arm slot, which is unorthodox. Let's just say that. We've talked about it so many times with pitching, irregular motion.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to it, I always had my reservations a bit. I wanted Manaea to come back, and I wanted him to come back at the right price point, and I had put it at around $70 million, which he ends up getting what he gets. So I was in the ballpark, and I'm happy that he's back. But for me, I'll give it a solid B+, mainly because of the things that Carson was just alluding to, and that me being worried, and I'm going to stay consistent with it. I was worried, and I said this to John multiple times, that bringing back a player like this, I am concerned when it comes to the workload, especially when he's coming off of a season that we saw him lose steam at the end, then asking him to replicate, because as we can see already, that the the starting rotation might not be what you wanted it to be because of the Montas injury. We'll see how things progress as the season goes. But I've been saying you want guys that eat innings, so it doesn't put that much strain on a Manaea, because you then be asking him to go out there and say, hey, Sean, like we need you for a minimum 6 tonight. Like, can we get 6? Like pushing him to his limits, like I felt he was pushed to last season in the second half, which he passed with flying colors. But then you saw how he wore down at the end, and that was the most innings that he had thrown in a season. Now he gets 3 years. Now he gets $25 million a year. Now he's asked to basically be, if you think Kodai is the one, if we want to play this whole game of aces or ones and twos, whatever, he's considered like the 1A or the 2, however you want to look at it. So yeah, the pressure's on in that sense, but I'm hopeful that he can provide similar production to what he provided last season. I hope that, what Carson was just saying as well, when you're when you're mimicking the likes of someone of Chris Sale, yes, he just won a Cy Young, but we also know that there is a litany of injuries when it comes to the likes of Chris Sale. So I'm not, I don't want that to happen to Sean. He seems like a fantastic guy. Wanted to be a Met. We've always, on all of our shows, we always say how it's important to have guys that want to be here, who have success here, which he did last season. He comes back at a semi-discount. I want him to do well, but I think a solid B+ is proper for this one.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's all really, really fair because, again, I think that when you bring in any sort of pitcher, no matter what, anyone is going to think from face value that maybe it's an overpay. Because, again, that's just how the pitching market is. When it comes to Manaea, it was kind of like that low 2, high 3 type of money that he did get. With it being deferred, it's a little bit better personally, I think, because millions to millions with this luxury tax, 110% added onto it. It's, something that you kind of want to keep track of in that way. I understand we got the deep pockets and Steve Cohen, but whatever. Anyways, I'm going to also be here with Andrew here and give this an A, because I think that this is the only way to, fit this thing in of forming this rotation, because you can get a little bit of anything with Sean Manaea at his best, where he can give you those sort of innings. He can also give you the strikeout stuff, contact manage, go deep into game. Like, you can get a lot of different things from him. And I feel like you're kind of in like that sweet spot of he's in his mid-30s, he's well developed. There is some concern there, of course, with the arm slot. Maybe there is some health concerns, you never know. But I feel like when you're talking about a 6-man rotation as well, which kind of is a little bit less possible right now with Frankie Montas going down, which is why I probably would add another pitcher on a minor league deal that maybe could, the Dylan Bundy level or whatever, but hopefully better than Dylan Bundy. But again, when it comes to the depth, anchoring the rotation, somebody said it in the chat. I feel like he did that a good amount. Again, when it comes to a 6-man rotation, Sean Manaea, to preserve that type of sustainability in that way, I think it will benefit him just as much as it benefits somebody like Senga to stay healthy, get that extra day of rest. They're not in that, motion as of right now, and that's the main reason as to why, we got an injury from Frankie Montas that was, I don't even know what the hell he did, but he hurt himself. So again, they're going to have to get into somewhat of a rhythm here, but I think that this is the type of sweet spot deal of 3 years is the most I would give to a starting pitcher. I was willing to overpay to bring back Manaea because I feel like there was just a really good room for stability with him, even though there is some questions if he can repeat it or not. But again, it all really just has to go with innings, and you got a good amount of innings from him last year. There's a wear down. I get it. But hopefully they look at it from an angle of, okay, yes, this worked out last year, but also we're going to still have to make some adjustments, because at the end he said, oh, well, I kind of ran out of gas there. And that came in the most unfortunate moment in Game 6 against the Dodgers. So maybe the less of the workload can be better for him. There definitely is a little bit more expectation for him to somewhat repeat what he did last year. But we will see, how that all evens out there. it all really just has to do with getting the innings, and the way to get innings is you got to get the outs. All right, and that's kind of how it works with guys like Griffin Canning. Give me a quality outing there, quality outing here. I'm not asking for the world. Keep us in the game, and just let Juan Soto outslug everyone, and we'll win plenty of games. Now, speaking of outslugging, somebody who, if you mess with him, he'll slug you. Jesse Winker, 1 year, $7.5 million. He looks like he's going to be the DH for the left side of the plate. A great platoon with Starling Marte, which is a great bang for buck, but good batting average, so who cares, right? Frank, I will go to you. Jesse Winker's back, and postseason legend on the big stage.
Yeah, I mean, Winker, he's a very interesting one because of how it went with the regular season compared to the playoffs. So for me, I had him at a B+. I think in general, you would like someone from your DH that maybe has a little more power, but also we know the struggles against the left-handed pitchers. So he's also someone that technically is going to be in a bit of a platoon with Starling Marte. So he's not someone that's there every day. And I just really hope that we get more of the postseason version than we did the Mets regular season version, because as we know, before he became a Met, he was having a really great regular season. That's why we wanted to trade for him. Then he comes to us. Inconsistent playing time with JD Martinez being here for sure. But generally speaking, I would say B+ because at least he got done on the big stage, which is where it matters most to me. But, he is going to be limited, being the fact that he does struggle against the left-handed pitchers. So I do wonder how it kind of plays out, where if he's a starter, they bring in a left-handed reliever middle of the game. If he's able to, play all 9 innings as well at the DH position, how that impacts the roster construction too.
Ibby, I know that you were a really big proponent of this when it happened, when we traded for him, traded Tyler Stortaway, the future ace of the century.
That's a big talking point.
Anyways, Jesse Winker's back and is going to be a part of a platoon with Marte.
I was shocked that we got Winker back, mainly because I thought that there's a lot of desperate teams out there when it comes to lack of outfield. There's a bunch, I can name Pittsburgh, I can name Houston. There's a lot of teams that don't have outfielders. So I thought somebody was going to give this guy 2 years, let him get him a chance to start somewhere, whether it was at a corner spot. I know his defense isn't the greatest, but just having a bat like that in their lineup, I thought he would have gotten more opportunities. But I'm pumped because I said to John, I would love to have him back. When we were talking about who we would like to see come back, we mentioned the likes of Minaya and Winker, and I was like, I would love to have him here, but I just think someone's going to give him 2 years. I didn't think that Stearns was going to give him that extra year. Get him for the one. I love the attitude, the fact that we have him and a Siri. You got to have those assholes on your team, because it really does carry in a clubhouse when you have someone like that on your side. Like we always say, it's one thing when someone else is an asshole on another team. It's one thing when they're when they're representing you, and people, and Mets fans especially, always want those guys that have that fire and that grit. So I think he fits that persona. I think he embraces it. I think he likes being here. I think it really showed out with the abbreviated time that he was here last year, as well as, being at Amazing Day and stuff like that. It seems like he's really digging the overall vibes of the clubhouse. So for me, I give it a solid B. I understand when people want to say that, they wanted more power. They thought that they would get more from the DH position, but I think he provides something for this team all around. Do you want a little bit more punch? Sure. But, I think some of that gets masked as well when you bring in a Juan Soto as well. So I think he fits. I think it works, and I think a B is the proper way to go about
it. John, I'll go to you. Winker's back. As we've said, he's an asshole.
Yeah.
We love him.
Yeah, but now he's our asshole, and he's my kind of asshole too. Just anybody who watches our show knows. I kind of vibe with Jesse Winker's whole thing. No, he's a guy. Ibby and I talked a lot about. Made perfect sense for the Mets to acquire. We're really happy, like you said, when they were able to acquire him at the deadline from the Nationals. He was a guy that I had been pushing for the Mets to bring back. Ibby was saying that he was skeptical, like he just mentioned now. Not that he didn't want him back, but that a team would get desperate, a bad team, the Padres or something, a needy team, a bad team would offer him an opportunity that the Mets were never going to touch. Multiple years, too much money, a starting outfield spot, whatever. And I'm happy that none of that panned out with regards to Jesse Winker, because I think he fits this team, again, like I said about Manaea, he fits this team on the field and he fits this team in the clubhouse. I'm going to go ahead and give him a B-. I think in a vacuum, he is probably a C+ player, but I think he gets the bump up to a B- for aura, because I think him and Siri, I think you need those kinds of people, like Ibby said, on the team. But I also think that he gets a bump because the Mets have, in my opinion, two clogged up spots in their everyday lineup. One is Jeff McNeil. The other is Starling Marte. But by bringing Winker back, you make Starling Marte a more useful player, even though you're paying him a lot more than you'd like for what he's going to offer. But if Starling Marte becomes the weak side platoon at DH and sometimes outfielder, and he is motivated, this is a guy who's had a lot of success in his career, to stay on the field and prove that he can produce more than that, I think you're going to get the best possible Starling Marte that you can get by pairing him with a guy like Jesse Winker. We talked about it on our show over the last 2 weeks. I don't have the numbers in front of me, and I apologize for that. But in your own time, if you want, go look at the splits last year. Winker versus right-handed pitching, Starling Marte versus left-handed pitching. That is as good as you can do from the DH spot for, I think, a total of, what is it? Somewhere around $20 million for both guys. Obviously, Marte making significantly more in terms of that split. But I think you can do much, 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 much worse. You want to have more punch. I get that. But I just think Winker fits this team, and he makes Marte motivated and the most useful version of Starling Marte we can get for the final year of his career.
Andrew, you have advocated to bring Jesse Winker to this team for multiple years now. I have seen you want to have him as the 26th man so many times, just bringing him home. He's back. What do you think about bringing back Jesse Winker? I think I know where this is heading.
I'll give it a B, but I think it's definitely, to what John said, you need these type of guys, because again, as the hockey nerd that I am, I'm watching the Four Nations face-off, and as talented as Team USA is, who's the guy that's starting, that's running this team? It's the Kachucks. The two guys that are willing to knock your ass out and don't give a fuck. And this is what Jesse Winker brings. You can have all the talent in the world. Sometimes you just need that snarl and just that piss off, annoying energy that can bring our locker room together. And that's what Jesse Winker is. Yes, there was a better player that has all of that I would have preferred, but he decided to go to Texas, and he will seem to never be on this team. But again, for what the options were, and, again, according to Andy Martino, this was going to be the Pete Alonso replacement. So that already, in my book, was an upgrade. Remember, Andy said, Jesse Winker's going to replace Pete Alonso. So, that's an upgrade. That raises his grade. Make it a B+ just for that. But again, just to have him back in the locker room, he seemed to fit in. It seems him and Nimmo are like best buds. So, there's some more bonus points. So, again, is he going to be the greatest player? No. But again, like John said, he takes ABs away from Starling Marte and gives you some production. And like Frank says, I'm okay if you're going to be average in the regular season, that when it comes postseason times, you're hitting 400-foot nukes, pissing everybody off, and watching it fly. You can do that on my team any day of the week.
Yeah, $7.5 million to be a DH, occasional corner outfielder. They have a lot of outfield options on this team that can be actual outfielders, so we don't need to pretend like Jeff McNeil is one. Oh, sorry. Anyways, I think when it comes to this move, I love Jesse Winker's approach at the plate. I think it's something that needs to be protected in this lineup. We talk about it all the time. Frank, we have emphasized this, the sliders that everybody was chasing has nothing to do with the hitting coach at all. But I'm going to go with a B here. The only reason I don't put it higher is because I don't like this expensive DH platoon. I get that it's valuable. You can have guys hit against left-handed pitching, great batting average from Marte and everything. Winker can hit right-handed pitching, but the thing is that it's such awful acclimation that we all knew it was going to happen either way. But again, it's just like, if I were to do that, I probably would have went a little bit more thump in a guy that they were also interested in Jock Peterson. It's never going to happen, but I can dream. The main reason as to why I can't put this any higher is because the thought of Marte being a $20 million DH, it's like, it sickens me. It really does. And I get it. Yes, he had good numbers against lefties, and everyone's going to tell me to go jump off of a bridge. But it's awful roster allocation, and it just justifies it even more. Like, that's literally how I look at it. And personally, I think if Starling Marte's money wasn't here, and if a certain someone who shall remain nameless until now, I feel like that's one of the main reasons as to why they're not, splurging big on starting pitching either way, is because of that type of money plus the tax. Like, that's how I look at it. And listen, I get it. He batted .300 against left-handed hitting, but his power's zapped. It's gone. It doesn't exist. And the DH, from what we have seen, needs to be a power position. And I'm not saying this is a Darren Ruff conversation, but what you're paying him to be a DH, it's just not good allocation. That's just how I look at it from the technical term. I get that it fits well with Winker and Marte. I just don't like enabling Marte DH at bats just because, he's old and he's here and he can't move anymore. It's a shitty situation, which, like I say always sarcastically, thank you, Billy Epler, for existing.
It's funny that you took the same spin that I had, but you're looking at it from a negative standpoint. I get why, though.
Yeah.
And I want to apologize for misspeaking.
Yeah.
I said for almost $20 million.
I get what everyone
$25
says.
million.
I get it.
But yeah, I just think you need to have less at bats from Starling Marte in order to maximize what he can do and keeping him healthy. But I do completely agree with you. I mean, I said as much with regards to, they just have two of these just unbelievable, plugs in the drain, and that's McNeil and Marte and the money that they're making. But I think this is as good bringing back Winker, especially with the success that he had here in the postseason and just in the clubhouse in general. I think it's the best you could hope for to maximize this final year of Marte. And they did try to shop him, but you were going to have to eat a ton of that money anyway.
Yeah. Again, that was the thing. But then when I see these reports of like, we could have gotten Hunter Harvey from Kansas City, of like allocated this in a way and emptied the roster spot, make the team a little bit deeper and more upside in that way. I wanted Jock Peterson. All right. I just wanted him. All right. Let me have him. I want him. He'll be here when he's like 45. Anyways.
Can I ask you a really dumb question?
Go ahead.
Just to you. Okay. The Mets find a way to trade Marte. They get Hunter Harvey, whatever. Would you rather the Mets DH platoon to start the season be Jesse Winker and Starling Marte exactly as is, or they were able to trade Marte, they signed Jock Peterson instead, but now the platoon is Jock Peterson and Nick Madrigal?
Man,
those are the only two options. Those are the only two ways.
Yeah, that is where I'm like, okay, let's just eat it. Let's just live with it. It's fine. Marte's been here before. Everyone seems to like him. It's fine. Oh God. I thought at one point, with the allocation of, Marte, them talking about trading him, they were like heating up. I really thought that it was going to be Jesse Winker and then possibly them bringing in somebody like Randall Grichuk. I thought that would have been some kind of a possibility, but they still, Marte, the Marte Parte, you know. But I just there's so many different ways that I can look at this Marte situation that just sickens me. But there's nothing you can do right now. Like, that's the thing. Like, you got to accept at this point that this is going to be it. You know, that's it. And if he ends up getting hurt again as a DH making $20 million, I'm punching a hole in the wall. But we haven't gotten there yet. Anyways, now speaking of other additions that are also in injury concern at this current moment, AJ Minter was somebody that they added on a 2-year, I think it was 22 million, 23 million, something around
22.
There.
It's 11 million
there.
per.
Yeah, 11 million per. Great reliever with Atlanta, had hip surgery, was definitely affected by it. Velocity went down. Does he have a magical hip like David Peterson has now? Who knows? But in terms of filling in the bullpen, Frank, I'll go to you. Solid addition. Let's just say that.
Yes, I mean, solid addition because he's been solid for the past few years. But I'm just going to give A- only because of that injury concern, just because I don't know if it's a guarantee he's going to be as good as he's been in the past. I mean, you really just never know when it comes to injuries, especially with relievers. I mean, you just feel like it's always bound to happen at some point. And then there's also that pessimistic, like, oh, a guy that was good for the Braves for a long time is just going to become a Met and be good. It's like, I don't know. It's just like something about that. I'm not sure. So he's A-, but listen, by the time the year's over, he could be A+ because he could have a big impact. I really wanted the Mets to add something new to this bullpen. It's nice as from the left side, even though he had reverse splits in 2024. But just overall, I am glad that they were still able to make an addition as another high leverage guy that they could trust.
Definitely. And then you add in a little bit in the middle there with a healthy Danel Nunez. That would be pretty awesome. That would be awesome. My other co-host, Andrew Minter.
Gave it a B+. Again, it's a good acquisition. It's a reliever on a multi-year deal with a player option. Again, Frank's favorite thing. Second year's a player option instead of a team option. But again, him being injured, we'll see if he's, again, Carlos said he should be ready for opening day. Again, relievers, it's really hard. No one should ever really get a name. That's the really a 1-year deal because it's the reliever. Because God forbid, who knows with these guys up and down. So again, you weaken the Braves, but the Braves didn't really replace him. So you make your division rival weaker and a guy that when I think of AJ Minter, I think of Brandon Nimmo taking him yard on Mother's Day for the walk-off. But overall, anywhere else has been dominant against the Mets. So it's an upgrade in the back end of the bullpen. Maybe it gives the Mets the ability of maybe carrying a second lefty and making him just a straight setup man. God forbid the Mets have 2 lefties in their bullpen. That's a sin to most Mets fans. So, again, it's a B+. It's a good acquisition. It's just a reliever. You're not getting an A for a reliever.
Okay. Tough crowd. All right. Ibby, I'll go to you. AJ Minter.
I felt that for me, I liked the signing. What I didn't like was when, of course, our fan base shit all over it because it wasn't Tanner Scott. Obviously, you get him for a fraction of the cost, and people were like, "Oh, you're pinching pennies. You should have got Scott." Blah blah blah. When really, Minter has been one of the better lefty relievers over the last 3 seasons. So again, that's just being married to names and not doing a little bit digging a little bit deeper when it comes to overall stats. But people being lazy doesn't really shock me all that much anymore. But I liked it. I'm giving it a solid B+. Again, mainly because it's incredible and nice to finally have a lefty that throws hard in the bullpen. Like we talked about this on our show, where it's like, when's the last time we had a lefty that actually had stuff, a track record, and threw hard? And like, was it Billy Wagner, like who's now finally getting into the Hall of Fame? So having a guy like that in this pen, to what you were just saying before with Noon.
Did he cut out for you guys? I don't know.
Yeah, he just told you. That's how his Wi-Fi is.
Anyways,
here I am. Building that bridge.
Hey, he's back.
You're good.
I'm back. Building that bridge to Diaz is very important. I'll finish this real quick so I don't cut out again. Solid. Love that it's a lefty. have high expectations for him. To Frank's point before, this B+ could go towards an A+ if he does what I think he can do. So I'm very confident on this one. Even with coming off of the hip, he seems to be healthy. Things are going proper. Let's make sure he's not drinking any water in Port St. Lucie so he can stay that way. Put him in bubble wrap, get him back to City. We get him ready for the season. But all in all, very excited about the Minter signing.
All right, John, AJ Minter, addition to the bullpen.
I'm going to go to B+ as well. I think you guys have kind of made a lot of the points that were out there to be made. I'll just add to the fact that, yes, over the last, year and a half, Tanner Scott has been the better player, and he's also younger, but AJ Minter was the more consistent player prior to that. You could also say, yes, Tanner Scott has that electric plus fastball, so he might be on the upswing, whereas AJ Minter might be on the slight decline, especially after the hip surgery. However, I'll just throw the number 50 out there because that is the difference in millions of dollars between the Tanner Scott contract and the AJ Minter contract. And it could be more like 60 if he doesn't take his second year option. So look, I'm not in the business of spending other people's money. I'm also not in the business of trying to not pay players. I'm also not in the interest of penny pinching. But I think when you look at value for a reliever, it is very difficult to have a guy like Edwin Diaz under contract and then go out and give a similar contract to a setup man and hope that both of those guys continue to be what they are without ever having hiccups. The best relief pitchers in the history of the sport, not named Mariano Rivera, have all had their hiccups. The aforementioned Billy Wagner. You look at, all the ups and downs of Craig Kimbrell's career. You look at where K-Rod ended up. You look at the Eric Gagnes of the world. All of these guys, they are wipe out at one point and then they're not. And maybe they have a resurgence and maybe they don't. Josh Hader, Devin Williams, the list goes on and on and on. Baseball is littered with the bones of relief pitchers who got paid too much money and never lived up to the deal. So I love to see the value that the Mets were able to get on this deal. And the last thing I'll say about it is, you did mention the hip injury and the surgery that he had last year, but, still appeared in 39 games. And I know ERA is not everything, but pitched to a 2.62 ERA with that bad hip. When you compare that to David Peterson, who is a much younger player who had that bad hip, he only pitched in 27 games the year that he was injured and pitched to a 5.03 ERA. So you're looking at, if AJ Minter has any kind of bounce back similar to what we saw, a healthy hip on David Peterson look like, I think this is going to be a very good value deal, but B+ across the board for me.
Yeah, I only saw Tanner Scott coming here if it was like a 2-year deal or maybe a 3-year deal, something like that. It's a reliever. Like, he had a great season. It could be an outlier season. It could be a peak season. Who knows? I think that there's a little bit of the PTSD of how the contract of Edwin Diaz worked out, because, maybe he's good again, but like 5 years to a reliever, it's not something that's common. It does not happen. And since he signed that, it has been a roller coaster. Let's just say that. I'm also going to go with the B+ here. Again, I think that there's a lot that they need from a guy like AJ Minter. There's a little bit of concern with the hip injury, obviously. Hopefully it's something that improves and he's able to, get a little bit more rotation in the hips, similar to what they did with Sean Manaea. He kind of had the hip rotation thing with drive line. That's kind of how the out of velocity. So we'll see how that kind of is the look from there. Another thing that he does very well, expanding the zone. He's able to get these chases, something that they really struggled with, and they really struggled to get out of some of these situations, or it just seemed to be a lot of walks. Guys who can expand the zone, very, very important in that way. And then, of course, the back end of this bullpen, building a bridge to Edwin Diaz, it's very, very important because whether you like the Diaz contract, whether you hate him, the most hated man on the planet, the most loved man on the planet, I can't even keep up. I am a ride or die with Edwin Diaz. We know this by now, but I mean, what else can you say? He's your closer, $102 million closer. So he is going to pitch. He's going to be on this team. So you're going to have to build a comfort level to him. And AJ Minter definitely does that better than some of the jagoffs we've had on this team. Anyways, speaking of other relievers, we had Ryan Stanek come back as well, was acquired from Seattle for, I don't know, some outfielder who there's like, random Mets fans that probably hyped him up for a second. But 1 year, Jesus Christ, 1 mil, 4. Okay. Ryan Stanek's back. Frank, I'll go to you. I'm not even going to try. I'm not even, that's just whatever.
Well, whatever the contract was, it wasn't all that much considering, what some relief pitchers could get. I'm going to give a similar grade to Winker because he was kind of the same situation where the Mets get him trade deadline, was not great in the regular season, but was really good in the postseason. So I'm going to give him B+ and just hope that we get like the postseason form that we got of him. One of the things that he has going for him is that he had been good in the past, especially in the postseason. So he is like, him and Minter are like those few relievers where you actually have seen guys that are good year in, year out, where we know so many other relievers who like, oh, they're an all-star, and then next year they're awful. So, I mean, at least these guys are the very few consistent ones you see. So I'll give him B+. And like I said, I hope we get the postseason form. And I feel like having somebody like Minter makes Stanek better, and having someone like Stanek makes Minter better. Because I was talking about like not overworking your relievers to get the best versions of them. So it's like you add as many good relievers as you can, and everyone's just going to perform much better.
Yep, definitely deepens the pen. They've got a little bit more stuff in this and a little bit more guarantee. Let's just say that. Ibby, I'll go to you on this one. Ryan Stanek, 1 year, $4.5 million, 4 year. I got it right?
You got it. 1 year, $4.5 million.
Well,
Look,
okay.
I've been someone on our show that and on Twitter also just very pumped up every time Stanek came in, especially during the playoffs. So everything, Frank, I'm going to echo everything he just said, because like that's the guy that I had the most trust in really when it came to the playoffs. Like he came in, he was nails, and just seeing him and the energy that he brought, throwing hard, basically like here's my fastball, hit it, and no one was touching it. He's playoff driven, he's playoff tested. He's won in Houston. I think he was on the winning team, but he was in Houston for a long time. And, he, like any reliever, you have your ups and downs. Are there going to be ups and downs during the regular season? Yes, but let's work our asses off. Let's get to the playoffs. And I want to see this guy back out there when, the stadium is packed and he's got that juice flowing. So he's ready to throw as hard as he can. That's the guy that I want. This is, again, because the ups and downs, the fickle nature of bullpen guys, I'll give it a solid B. I think that's where it belongs. So I think that having it and building that bridge to Diaz is very important. I think he's a big part of that. I think Minter's a big part of that as well. And everyone else just taking a step back in roles, but also at the same time stepping up within those given roles, which is going to make the bullpen better overall. Love that Stanek is back and very pumped up about it.
All right. Oh, whoops. That was, I put it in John's. Speaking of John, if you want to grade this one.
Yeah, this is a tricky one for me because he's one of those guys who Mets fans, I think all of us have had him circled as a guy who made a lot of sense, right? Let's like the Andrew Chafins of the world, where it's like, when is this guy going to be on the team? You guys talked about Jock Peterson before. When is this guy going to be on the team? Ryan Stanek makes so much sense. He makes so much sense. And this one finally comes to fruition. And when he got here, Mets fans, the Mets franchise, Mets players, the team, we got the full Ryan Stanek experience, which is a bit of an up and down during the season and nails in the postseason. That's kind of what this guy's reputation is. I think he pitched to like a 4.8 ERA or something between the two teams last year. And his ERA with the Mets, again, ERA not being everything, not pretty. And it was reflected in his performance. But that said, I think sometimes you need more proven commodities in a bullpen. And I think the Mets in years past have been a little, even with Stearns last year, and I understood why, because some of the financial constraints, the money they had tied in, the dead money, if you will, quote unquote, to some players who weren't on the roster, trying to be a little bit more savvy in the bullpen. But now that some of those handcuffs are off, I think it's a little easier to spend a known quantity of money, this, $4.5 million on a known quantity pitcher. And so I think it made a lot of sense for him to come back. He's only getting a $500,000 pay increase from what he had last year. So I think it's a really good deal for the Mets. No such thing as a bad 1-year deal, especially for relief pitchers. That's where you want to live. But he is going to be up and down. I think he does do a lot of really good things. He has good stuff. Sometimes he's going to give up home runs. Sometimes he's going to walk people. I hope he is nails in the postseason. I hope the Mets make the postseason. But I think if you're looking at Ryan Stanek and you're being truthful as to what he has been as a player, I think you have to give this a C+. Because I think he is a C+ kind of player. He's probably a B- to a B addition for this roster, but I think he's a C+ player just for his career. So I'm going to go. Doesn't mean I don't want him. Like I said, I think C is average, and I think everything above that is to the positive. So I'm happy he's back, but I think Met fans do need to be realistic about what he's going to give you over the course of 162.
Yeah. He can be wild, but he also can be electric. Definitely a low floor type of pitcher, but a high ceiling. I'm just glad I don't see the low floor pitching in the sense of Adam Ottavino, who's just throwing a bunch of fucking frisbees to the backstop. I'd rather have this of, okay, here's my fastball. Try and go fucking hit it and do whatever you want with it. Anyways, Andrew, Ryan Stanek, beautiful flow. What do you think?
My fellow Missourian boy, I gave him a B. Again, there were better options, but at his price point, again, he's comfortable here. Again, a guy like Jesse Winker was not great in the regular season, showed up in the postseason when you need him bigger. Again, I'll take these type of guys all the time for less than $5 million. It's nothing bad. Again, and it lengthens the bullpen. It doesn't have to put pressure on a guy like Daniel Nunez. Like, hey, that's it. He's the guaranteed high leverage. Ryan Stanek has had some high leverage opportunities to lengthen that pen to say, hey, we like Daniel Nunez. We want Daniel Nunez to be like that second guy up. Now you can go into the season. Maybe he's the fourth behind a guy like Ryan Stanek because he's proven he can get high leverage outs. You don't have to force Daniel Nunez right away. You lengthen your bullpen. You bring another great arm. And like you said, we don't have to watch Adam Ottavino through that godforsaken sweeper. Enjoy Boston and go pitch in Fenway with the Green Monster. That's a great decision.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Enjoy it, Ottavino. You will be missed by some Mets fans who think you're good, but sorry. Anyways, I love Ryan Stanek. I've been a huge fan of Ryan Stanek for a long time. As you know, a cam comes out. This is another separate cam. So I'm going to, he'll be back. Anyways, I am going to give this one a B as well. Again, I think that this is just, loading up the bullpen in depth in that way. I feel like the workload is not going to be as high as they were relying on him with the playoffs. It's really, really hard to assess relievers no matter what. But I think that when it comes to, the thought of just, combining this bullpen, taking some pressure off of Reed Garrett with some guy, like it all complements it a lot better. Let's just say that. Now, as for the final guy that is here, it was a reunion. Pete Alonso is back on 2 years, $54 million player option the second year, $27 million luxury tax hit. But anyways, Andrew, let's just get it out the way. Okay, let's just put it all down there. I am not liable for anything that he says. Do not post my address online or on Twitter. Go ahead.
I won't be the reason that happens, but okay. Again, my favorite player, my best bud, the greatest first baseman to ever live by everyone in the comment section. It's a B. Again, it gives you the ability that he's going after this year. If he has a good year, you're not locked down to him. But again, also you're paying him $30 million more than Freddie Freeman and Matt Olson. He's not better than those two guys, but again, you have to pay what it is to get the shorter term and the opt-out. Again, I am fine with it. Again, you needed it for this year. Obviously, you need the protection for Juan Soto. I'm in it. Happy again. You have the ability to get out. You're not stuck with this guy for 5 years. Also, he's come back humbled, which is good to see in that press conference. He realized, damn, I'm not getting that Prince Fielder. That was kind of a humbling experience to see it. So again, you get your help, you get your production now. You still have the ability if you want to go get that guy who's better than him, who's 26, who didn't sign in Canada, because God, it's been a tough week for Canada this week. But again, it gives you the ability, long-term flexibility, while also getting the short-term benefits.
All right. I was expecting lower, to be honest. I'm not gonna lie. Ibby, I'll go to you. Welcome back. Pete's
you guys
back.
got me? I know I'm cutting out a little bit. Can you hear me? Am I good? Okay.
We're shocked
So-
by the
Yeah.
situation with your Wi-Fi. I cannot believe, especially cannot believe this is happening.
Yeah, this is pretty bad, so I apologize. So I'll get this out really quick. Alonso, I know everyone wants to probably give this an A+, because everyone loves him so much, especially in the comments. But for me, I'm going to give it the A-. I'll give it the A- because all in all, it makes sense for the 1 year, everything that Andrew just laid out. You don't have to worry about the 5-year offer. I don't think it's going to end up becoming that either. This isn't going to be a Chapman situation. I said it on our show. I will repeat it. This is a 1-year deal. That's what this is going to end up being. And they're not going to deal with this nonsense again next year. It's not going to happen. This is what it is. So if you're a big Pete Alonso fan, I do think that this could potentially be the final ride, because I do think he will show out, and it makes sense for this roster in 2025. But moving forward, I do think he's going to end somewhere else. But for this season, A-. I hope he takes what he had learned about himself last year when trying to play for money and things correct itself. I think they will, which is why I'm giving him the A-, because, as I've said multiple times, he can just be what he's supposed to be in this lineup. Juan Soto is here. Francisco Lindor is the leader. Vientos is stepping up. This team is changing. It's not a Pete Alonso only team anymore. Be Pete Alonso. Be a power hitter. Go out, hit 40, then go try to make your money elsewhere. That's what I think eventually, or essentially, is what is going to happen. So all in all, A-. Welcome back, Pete. Hit the fucking ball. Let's go.
All right. Listen, guys, I don't know what to tell you. We're trying to just be realistic here. I'm sorry. It's like we already know what the situation was all off season. I mean, even though some people can advocate for him or some, we're just giving this directly. All right, it's not personal.
Hating?
Okay?
I don't think I'm hating at all. What is going on?
That's the thing. It's like,
what are we talking about?
Come on, like. Are we really just gonna sit here and be like, oh well, this guy's prime, this guy should get exactly what Aaron Judge was getting?
Wait a minute.
No.
I just got yelled at for giving too good of grades, and now I give a guy an A- and I'm wrong. What are we doing here? I don't get it.
I don't know. You can't win.
Ibby, it's the same people who told.
Win.
It's the same people who told me that I was being a Pete Alonso hater towards the end of the negotiations, when I had been advocating since, I don't know, the start of the season or the year before, that the Mets should extend him, that how I could do the math to get it to a 6-year deal, how I could do, because I thought his market was going to be different. And then when you saw what his market actually was, it's like, hey, you got to flip the script and you have to adjust to the reality of what you're watching. And all of a sudden I was being labeled a hater, when Ibby and Carson for sure know that I am anywhere from a Pete Alonso hater.
Yeah, John, if you want to grade this, definitely a controversial offseason in regards to Pete Alonso, polarized.
Yeah, look, I'll jump back in. I think kind of like a similar grade I gave earlier. I guess I did this a little bit with Stanek, but also with Winker. I think Pete gets a bump for some things that maybe don't even necessarily have to do with Pete. I think on the surface, this is somewhere between a B to a B+ deal, but I am going to bump it up to an A- for a few reasons. One, they needed him. He needed them. That's absolutely true. That's why he came back. That's why he took the deal that he took. But they also needed him. And there was never this true pivot. I understand that they spread money around and they went to Winker and they went to Minter, but they always left the door open for Pete. Pete was the guy they would have gone over the luxury tax threshold for, because they acknowledged they didn't have a great answer at first base, or if you move Vientos, then to third base. They needed to lengthen the lineup. They needed a right-handed power complement to Juan Soto. So they needed to bring him back. And I said, going back to the start of last season, that the Mets offseason was going to hinge on two moves. Yes, go out and get Juan Soto. If I could only pick one move, Soto was the guy. But after that, you needed to either bring back Pete or replace Pete because you needed that other person in the lineup. So from that standpoint, that bumps this up a little bit. The other part of it is it was a Stearns masterclass. Stearns played this so well. He played the long game, and he was able to go and get a deal that made sense for the Mets, and it gives them flexibility moving forward. I think I'm going to treat this as a 1-year, $30 million deal. I do not see a way, even if he has a repeat of the last year that he had where he opts into this contract. I don't see that happening. I think he will get more money on the open market, even if he only hits 34 home runs, even if he has a bit of a down year, because people are going to look at him now that Vladimir Guerrero Jr.'s contract extension window has closed as the cheaper alternative to Vladimir Guerrero Jr. So I don't think Vlad is going to hurt Pete's market. I think he's going to help Pete's market. So I think this gives the Mets flexibility. I agree with Ibby that this is not going to be a Matt Chapman situation, but if the Mets wanted to, they could go that way. I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think they should, but they could go that way. He could also opt in. I don't think he's going to. I don't think he should, but he could go that way. And if the Mets wanted to pivot to, like Andrew, I think said earlier, to the younger, better version who's 26 years old and Vlad Guerrero Jr., or any other option, Josh Naylor, whatever you want to do to fill out first base, they can do that now. This does not prohibit them from playing in that level of free agency. So I think for all of those reasons, it bumps it up to an A-. If this was not a $30 million deal this single year, I could have even gotten myself to bump it up to an A. But Pete Alonso is a very good player. He's one of my favorite players that has ever played for the Mets. I think sometimes he is unfairly bashed, but he is not a $30 million a year player. He is not the best first baseman in baseball. Therefore, he does not deserve to be the highest paid player at that position in baseball. And again, his luxury tax hit makes this like a $61 million contract for the year, which he is certainly not worth. Again, he's not getting all of that money, but that's what you're looking at here, or I guess slightly less because it's 27 in AAV, but the point remains the same. So there was a reason to bump it up to an A-, but there was reasons that I couldn't bump it up any further. And I think it's a good deal. I think he's going to have a good year. And I do think, like Ibby said, this will be the swan song for Pete Alonso and the New York Mets.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. I really, the future is still uncertain, but we know where he's playing in 2025. He's back, and we'll see what happens. Frank, I'll go to you. We have covered this saga all off season. We're all just glad it's over. He's back.
Yes, glad it's over. Glad he's back. I'm also going to go A-. I actually can see a scenario where the Mets are playing this game, so to speak, again next offseason. I know, like, the obvious idea is, just get Vlad, but it's another big contract to add on to the payroll. I know the payroll is decreasing as time goes on, but, as you're losing players, still got to bring in more players to replace them. It's not just like, guys are off the books, or we're just not going to have anyone else to play baseball. Like, no, you're still going to need to add more players as time goes on. So I feel like with Pete, the Mets, I always felt like they had opportunities that, like, if they really were like, we're not sure about Pete, like, there were replacement options early in the offseason, and it seemed like the Mets were just not very interested in it. And more so, Pete Alonso was not very interested in going anywhere else. I mean, because as much as, like, the Mets waited, well, Pete waited too, because you know what? I do find it very possible and likely that the Blue Jays offered him a better deal, and he turned it down because he wanted to be a Met. And eventually, once the Mets said, fine, we will increase the amount of money we're giving you, even on a shorter-term deal, that's when he said yes. So he's going to opt out, and I still feel like we're going to end up doing this again.
I mean, you never know. Again, it's about really extending the timeline here, because I don't know what the confidence is and the development is of guys like Ryan Clifford. People talked about that before. Mark Vientos moving to first base long term. I don't know. But again, this is really what it comes down to, and Carlos actually makes it I mean, he had nowhere else to go. And I feel like there were Mets fans out there that saw it from the orange and blue goggles, and they're saying, "Oh, this guy, everyone's gonna want him." It's a slap in the, I mean, yeah, it slapped you in the face because no one wants to invest in this way, and the Mets, in my opinion, they overpaid in this way. But in terms of the situation at hand, it's great for both sides. The Mets get their first baseman, don't have to see Brett Beatty in the lineup. That's the 100% big win here for me. Him just rotting in Syracuse, that just brings me great joy. Anyways, but I will also give this an A-, but the main reason as to why I can't give this an A+ is because of how draining this entire process was.
That sucked.
It just was so insane. And yet, listen, if he was not homegrown, none of this would have been happening. None of it would have happened. And that's the thing. It's like, again, keeping a guy, if you want to keep your guy, whatever, but it's like, there were so many different situations that we went into this entire offseason where it's the reality of the situation. We're not hating on Pete Alonso. We don't stop it, Andrew. I will legitimately punch you through this screen. You're making it worse. Anyways, we're not sitting here hating on Pete Alonso, think he's the worst person known to man. Again, baseball is a business. You have to look at it from a business standpoint here. And that is how they approach this, of what he is worth. And they gave him a higher AAV. I think that they were very, very generous in this way. To continue the negotiations as long as they did, I thought they were pretty generous in that way because it dragged along as much as it did. Again, you can look at this from the guy in 2019 who was the Rookie of the Year, won the Home Run Derby. Guess what? Vladimir Guerrero's won a Home Run Derby too. So guess what? Checkmate, assholes. Anyways, when it comes to the look of the lineup, it makes it deep. It makes it deeper. And this is when I talk about it from, Jesse Winker, protecting flaws in that way. I think that they did a really good job building this roster overall. But again, it's just these types of investments of giving these guys these big long-term contracts. It's just not going to happen the way that everyone expects it to, the way that it did with Albert Pujols or Prince Fielder, especially on the downtrending market that Pete Alonso got. And for those of you who are going to say that he got lowballed, again, if he didn't want this type of drag-out negotiation, he should have played better in 2024. I don't know what to tell you. Again, we say this all the time. One home run in Milwaukee does not define everything that he needs to get for the next 5 years. I don't know what to tell you anymore. I don't care if he is homegrown. I don't care if he's this or that. This is the situation at hand. It's just, I'm so tired of this entire debate. I'm tired of talking about it. I am done. When it happened, I'm like, finally, we are done. Brett Beatty is gone. That's the silver lining. He's out of the lineup. And that's it. I'm not going to sit here and say, well, Pete Alonso, this is his moment to be the greatest, Met of all time. I don't care right now. I just want to see baseball. That's it. I was so tired when this happened. It's just, again, I've said it from the beginning. I welcome Pete back with open arms. But after the way that he's played these last 2 years, it's going to have to be on the Mets' terms. Because, again, who's going to line up to bring him in? He had no other place to go. That's literally it. It's the reality of the situation. He's not being disrespected or blacklisted. It's not happening. I don't know who's saying that. Again, it's just, that's the reality. Business is heartless. It's heartless. And we're seeing that at first experience with Jose Iglesias right now. Doing all these interviews with John Heyman. He was a big part of this team. They possibly did not get to where they were last year without him. But again, he's going to be 36 years old, 35 years old or whatever. There's a way of catching lightning in a bottle and letting it go. And that's what they have to do in this scenario. I'd love to have him back, but again, it's like he did it recently. He'll do it again. That type of mindset. It's all about projecting it forward. If there's anything else you guys want to add on this, because it's overall just the offseason in general, 10 major moves here. We did not talk about Madrigal because he's not worth it anyways. Did talk a little bit about Drew Smith, but that's pretty much it. I did have another segment, but we went way past the time limit. So
crazy.
Again, it'll be for another day. But yeah, we will be sure to be live for spring training coverage. Make sure to follow us all individually. I guess we'll take a few comments in to close this one out. Rosie K saying Iglesias has a new single coming out. Listen, sometimes the sequel just isn't as good. I don't know what to like. Again, it's like it sometimes the sequel's just not great. That's literally. And again, it's always the recency bias that comes with it, and I get it. And it was a different story with Pete Alonso, but what can you say? I mean, I don't know. That's the reality of the situation. The Mets view Pete Alonso more, in a happier way compared to other teams. We knew it was going to happen. And for those that didn't think it was going to happen, we tried to warn you. I don't know what to tell you. Again,
I think that's very fair. Fair. There's one thing that you said, Carson, that I just wanted to comment on because I agree. I think we can all agree, us in this forum, and then even the people in the comments, whether you wanted Pete, hate Pete, love Pete, defend Pete, bash Pete, whatever, he was a valuable piece for the 2025 team, the way that the offseason played out. So I think everybody is some semblance of happy that he's back. But something that you said, about the exhaustion of the process, they made it impossible to celebrate the fact that he was back because of how long it took and the way that it went. Now, I don't care because I'm not seeing the money and I don't have to pay the money and I don't care which way it went, but it was just like a exhale relief that it was over, rather than being like, oh, we brought back a guy who is probably going to hit somewhere between 35 and 40 home runs, because that's usually what he does, even in the worst of times. And he's going to do what Ibby said, where he can just kind of be himself now, and he doesn't have to try to be a better hitter or a different kind of player. And he'll probably have a good year. And that means that the Mets will probably be pretty good with the other additions they've made. And it was like almost impossible to celebrate that, because it was just like, thank God it's over.
Yeah, I was happy. It was just a relief. That was it. And a lot of this could have been avoided by a lot of different other things. But now it's all in the past now. And now we're ready to play baseball. How about we play some baseball games? That would be awesome. Let's just say that. But again, I think that going into spring, again, we talked about Frankie Montas. Let me bring in the results of the rotation. I was going to refer to it in the middle of this, but we just had to go a little bit quicker because we went way over the time limit that I expected we would have. But I asked you guys, who you prefer to take Frankie Montas' spot in the Mets rotation? 32% of you are saying Paul Blackburn. 15% of you are saying Griffin Canning, and the leading one is Tyler McGill. Guys, listen, I don't criticize people's opinions at all, but really? Okay, sure. 53% of you guys want, I don't know if this is just an ERA leaderboard of how we're looking at it, but I guess I'll ask that final question to you guys, and that's how we'll do it on the way out. To replace Frankie Montas, who do you guys like in that scenario? Frank, I'll start with you. McGill, Canning, or Blackburn would you prefer? It's not a great selection, but who do you want to get it? Who are you putting your chips in on to get that job?
Yeah, I mean, it's really not the greatest choice, but for now, I'm going to have to give Blackburn the edge. I just feel like McGill's gotten so many opportunities, and we've yet to see that consistency. Blackburn, I didn't like what I saw as a Met, and then the whole spinal thing that he just never came back from last season definitely concerns me. But I just think, in comparison to who the other options are, like I said, Griffin Canning, I really just don't know yet. So I'll give Blackburn a slight edge, but none of the options are great.
Yeah. It's a sad reality in that way. Let me just switch this thing over. There we go. John, I'll go to you on your choice there. It's not a great selection, but
that thing you said about no foul language earlier, that was just for callers, not for us, right?
Absolutely.
Okay.
100%.
That list is really like a who's who of who gives a fuck. You know what I mean? Like, I just can't even get behind anybody. Everything being equal, no injury concerns. With Andrew, I'm going Blackburn if I had to pick, but I didn't know you could have spinal fluid leak from your body and not be dead. So I just didn't think that was possible. I'm not a doctor, but obviously I just didn't know that was an injury that one could suffer. So I don't think he's going to be ready. So I think I just by default have to pick Tyler McGill, even though I don't want to. I just think he has more upside than Griffin Canning. I think they're going to want to leave Canning in this kind of swing role. Similarly to how they don't want to mess with Jose Buto, I think they just see Canning's role being what it is. So I think it's going to be Tyler McGill. So I've just resigned the fact that I'll just pick Tyler McGill, but I would want Blackburn, but I don't know what his spine looks like. So yeah.
I don't know what his spine looks like. That's the discussion we're having right now.
I don't know. What's up?
You know?
What's up? Like, listen, get the predator monster to rip his spine out of his body and take a look at it, and we could all examine it, and then we could go from there. But until I see that spine.
Yeah. Yeah. These are the discussions we got to have before baseball comes on. It's crazy. Andrew, I'll go to you. McGill, Canning, and Blackburn. 3 winners. 3
Is a
huge
bullet
winners.
an option? I mean, Jesus. I mean, let's pick my favorite pitcher, the worst pitcher in baseball last year, and a guy with no spine. These are the options. I guess I'll go with Paul Blackburn because he's got the best beard of the 3 or 4. 3 of them. I mean, again, I'd rather just go to a 5-man rotation, but we want to do the 6-man. So I guess I'll just give it to Blackburn because God, I'm not giving David Peterson. Tyler McGill, another opportunity.
David Peterson leveled up. What do you mean? Anyways,
exactly. Now he's an 8.
Ibby, if you had to choose, it's rough. It is rough. Let's just say that.
I hate the fact that I'm going to have to watch Tyler McGill starts again, and that's what it's going to be. But that wasn't your question. Your question was, who would I rather have? I'd probably choose Blackburn, just because I don't know. Like I said, I don't want to watch.
I think he cut out. I don't know, but is he good?
Am I good? I'm here. Am I good?
Know.
I think I'm here. Yeah.
Yeah. You're good.
I don't want Tyler McGill starts. I hope that Paul Blackburn could be the one to provide some stability at this back end at 5, just to go out there and do a job for 4, maybe 5 innings. And I can't say Canning until I see what he can do here in the lab and showing that he's made some changes to not be one of the worst pitchers in baseball, a la Severino last year. Can you make upgrades? Can this lab help you become a better pitcher? Until I see that, I can't pick you. So by default, because I can't do McGill anymore, it's Blackburn.
Yeah. I think Blackburn's probably the best bet here. Hopefully he's healthier and his spine has no more leakage in it. I would go with Blackburn, but if you do see Canning kind of reinvent some things in spring, I would consider giving him a chance in that way. But it's like, who knows at this point? I think it's all going to be in that competition. I'm actually really glad that they're not putting Jose Budo in that conversation, because I think that he just found a really good fit in the bullpen, and just, continue in that way. So I would kind of, put it in that way as to where, anybody could be there. I would love to see Brandon Sproat completely dominate and be the next guy to come in. But, I'm being realistic in that way. It's kind of really easily explained in this one from Churro saying Blackburn is the Corey Oswalds of Adrian Hauser's. Like, that's literally what you're looking at right now. I think Blackburn can be like a little bit better than what he once was. But again, it's only like the last guy in the rotation. Hopefully that he's healthy. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I think we'll wrap it up here. John had to go pretty very, very early because he was here for so short. Anyways, past 2.5 hours. So I think we've done our due diligence here. Frank, I'll go to you for some final thoughts, and we'll wrap this thing up and go into spring training.
Yeah, I mean, luckily, like you said, we have spring training. We have a game this week. So by the next time we do a stream, we will be talking about a Mets game that happened. So, I mean, that's just really exciting. Just like every day, I love seeing the videos of like Juan Soto and Lindor and all these guys. So it's just fun to see, again, New York Met players on a baseball field playing the sport of baseball, because that's what we love to see.
All right. Andrew, to you. You got to go down to Port St. Lucie, get your autographs. That's your thing. What's with you? You're behind on that.
Well, the fact that there's 17 inches of snow coming, I couldn't get out of the airport. But besides the point,
come on, man.
I
mean, these excuses, man.
By the next time you see me, God knows that's going to be. But the next time there's a Mets Weekly podcast, the sport of hockey will be officially owned by the United States. Mets baseball will be played, and life's going to be good.
Got to go back to watching the Rangers. Anyways, Ibby, if you want to speak on behalf of your co-host as well, thanks for coming on, as well as John. Guys, make sure to go follow them. Links are all in the description.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the time, and I apologize for my shitty Wi-Fi, but all things considered, I'll echo the same stuff that Frank was saying, and that is I'm excited. Baseball's here. It's near actual games. We're talking about the stuff that matters, the on-field stuff, not the rumor, not the conjecture, not the Pete Alonso drama, none of that shit. The fact that I'm sitting here in freezing New Jersey, ice storms, snow, 40-mile-an-hour winds, wind burn, like all this nonsense, but I'm still smiling ear to ear because I get to see Juan Soto in shorts taking batting practice, Francisco Lindor hyping up the team, all this great stuff. It's good stuff for Mets fans. I'm excited for the season. I can't wait to get it all rolling. And quick self-plug, tomorrow, 5:30 p.m. Eastern Standard, right here on YouTube as well as X. Till Mets Do Us Part is live, episode 182. We'll be talking all things Mets, Juan Soto, Pete Alonso, the Montas stuff will hit on again. And of course, I guarantee you something will happen with this team over the next 20 hours or so that's going to allow us to speak on something else. So all that being said, thank you for the time. Always appreciated. You guys rock, and shout out to the chat. You guys were great.
All right. Yeah. By default, yeah, you took his name. Yeah, that's just kind of how StreamYard works. But anyways, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching, and hope you enjoyed the conversation. It was an extra long one than it usually is. Thank you guys so much for hitting the like button if you have already. Thank you to John Saponaro, Matt, Ibby, Ibanez for joining us as well. For those of you watching or listening on playback, you want to join the conversation live in the future, make sure to subscribe to the Mets Weekly YouTube channel. Turn on post notifications to know when we go live, which is regularly on